What if Draco was sorted into Gryffindor? The tower is quiet and full of whispers. October, well past midnight. Gryffindor common room. The fire has burned down to a low, watchful glow, throwing long shadows over armchairs and book piles and the scarlet rugs that have seen a century of footsteps. Rain taps against the high windows in uneven bursts, a restless, insistent rhythm. Thunder rolls somewhere over the black lake, distant but coming closer. Draco Malfoy walks in slow, tight lines across the rug, back and forth in front of the fireplace. He is barefoot. His school robes hang open, the lining flashing red and gold when he turns. The Gryffindor crest catching the firelight with every movement. A lion roars in thread over his heart, where a serpent should have coiled. He keeps glancing down at it, as if it might disappear if he looks away. In his right hand, he clutches his wand. In his left, a crumpled letter. Heavy parchment, soft at the creases from being folded and unfolded too many times. The Malfoy crest is broken where his fingers dug in. Silver ink cracked like a fault line. Wax flakes onto the rug as he tightens his grip. His hands are trembling, a fine, furious shake he cannot quite control. The room smells of smoke and old wood, and the faint, metallic tang of storm air that sneaks in around the window frames. The portraits along the walls mutter in their sleep. The fire gives a small, protesting pop, sending up a brief shower of sparks. Draco flinches, then exhales, long and slow, as if he has been holding his breath for hours. He has been planning this walk from the dormitory for what feels like half the night, lying rigid in a 4-poster bed, draped in scarlet, while the other boys snored, counting the cracks in the ceiling, rehearsing words he might never say. He knows every step from the staircase to this chair, every creak in the floor, every place the stone is cold under his feet. He stops in front of the fire, looks up. Above the mantel, the great Gryffindor banner hangs heavy and still, its lion picked out in gold thread that glows in the low light. The beast looks down at him, mid-roar, defiant, unbowed, more than any description could contain. Draco's jaw tightens. His eyes flick from the banner to the portrait hole, then back again, as if weighing two different worlds. Beyond the portrait, the corridor breathes. Footsteps, a pause, fabric brushing stone. Then a voice, low and sharp, just clear enough to reach through the crack when the fat lady shifts in her frame. A Malfoy can never truly be a Gryffindor. No name, no face, just the words, like a curse laid carefully in the air. The fat lady gasps, affronted, but whoever spoke is already walking away, their steps fading into the castle's deeper silence. Draco's fingers loosen on the letter. It falls to the rug with a soft thud, landing seal up, crest catching the light. Gringotts ink in the corner. Old formal hand. He looks at it as if it might bite. He looks at the portrait hole. They look at each other, boy and painted guardian. Her round face suddenly solemn. Rain drums harder against the glass. The fire gutters, then steadies. The tower seems to lean in. Draco lifts his wand, just a fraction. His voice, when it comes, is almost too quiet for the room. "I will not run this time," he whispers to the lion above him, to the unseen voice in the corridor, to the name on the fallen letter, and to something in himself that is only just beginning to wake. The storm answers with a crack of thunder, and the screen cuts to black before we know what waits on the other side of the portrait hole. The storm is gone. In its place, steam. August 1991. King's Cross Station. Early morning. The air is thick with it. white clouds rolling low along the platforms, swallowing ankles and trolley wheels. Loudspeaker announcements echo off iron beams. Somewhere a baby cries. Somewhere a whistle answers. In the middle of it all, a small boy with broken glasses leans his weight against a trolley that is almost too heavy for him. Trunk. Owl cage. One school list folded and refolded until the creases feel like cuts. That is everything Harry owns that belongs to this new world. He walks carefully, reading the signs for platforms 9 and 10, clutching Hagrid's letter in his pocket like it might vanish if he lets go. He has been planning this without quite knowing it, counting days on the calendar in the cupboard, tracing the ink of his name on the Hogwarts letter until the paper softened, replaying Hagrid's instructions in his head so often they have become a spell of their own. Straight onto the train, Harry. Best platform is 9 3/4. He knows the words. He does not know how to make a wall open. He looks at the brick barrier, looks at the crowds. No one else is walking through stone. No one else has an owl. His chest tightens. For one thin, stretched moment, Privet Drive feels closer than Hogwarts, and the bank in Diagon Alley and the goblins at Gringotts who treated him like he was someone real feel like a dream he imagined on the ride back. On the other side of the barrier, another boy is already where he belongs. Draco Malfoy stands on platform 9 3/4, as if it has been built for him. Immaculate black robes, pale hair combed into place with almost military precision, polished shoes that have never seen dust from a second-hand shop. Beside him, Lucius Malfoy's hand rests on his shoulder, light as a claim, heavy as a chain. Lucius speaks low, each word an instruction rather than comfort. Pure blood families, proper alliances. Remember your name. Narcissa leans in, cool perfume and cool lips on Draco's forehead. Her kiss a blessing and a warning together. More than any description could contain is packed into that tiny gesture. Pride, fear, calculation. Draco nods. He has been planning this too, in a different way. Memorizing which heirs matter, which professors can be swayed, which house will give him the clearest path to power. In his mind, there has only ever been one answer, green and silver, and carved into every story he has been told since he could walk. The two paths cross before either boy reaches that answer. Harry, still stuck on the Muggle side, finally hears it. Packed with Muggles, of course. A plump, red-haired woman, a cluster of red-headed children, the word that has hovered at the edge of his understanding since the bank. He watches as they vanish, one by one, into solid brick. Then he runs. The barrier gives way. The world changes. Steam, scarlet train, owls, cats. The cacophony of 100 magical families. Harry stares, stunned, then pushes forward, trolley rattling. For a heartbeat, the crowd parts. He sees them, the Malfoys. Lucius's cane, Narcissa's pale profile. Draco standing between them like a drawn sword. Harry's eyes snag on the boy his own age, the expensive robes, the easy certainty in his posture. He does not know the name yet. He only feels a prickle of curiosity, a faint echo of the fitting at Madame Malkin's, when another boy had talked about Slytherin as if it were the only house that mattered. Draco feels it too, a flicker at the edge of vision. He glances over, grey eyes narrowing in quick, trained assessment. The messy hair, the second-hand clothes, the lightning scar that his parents have not prepared him to see up close. Recognition from the robe shop clicks into place. So this is Potter. They look at each other, no words, no insults, no offered hand. just a moment suspended in steam and station noise. A moment of understanding passes between them that neither can name. You are important to my story. Then the spell breaks. A prefect calls for first years. Lucius's hand tightens. Molly Weasley's voice rises. Harry is swept toward the train. Draco turns back to his parents. They move on. Far away, inside the castle that waits for them, Professor McGonagall walks alone through the great hall, the sorting hat held in her hands like an artifact of war. Candles float overhead. The long tables are empty. She sets the hat on its stool, straightens it once, and pauses. This is the hinge. One patchwork, sentient hat. One decision, made in the space between a boy's fear and a boy's pride. About courage and ambition and the weight of a family name. In one world, the hat follows the path worn smooth by expectation. In this one, it hesitates. We stay here in the echo before the first years enter, because everything that follows, every alliance, every betrayal, every late-night argument in a shared dormitory will hang on what it whispers into Draco Malfoy's ear. What happens when the castle itself decides that the Malfoy heir belongs under the lion? The manor is quiet and full of watching. Long before the hat ever brushes his hair, Draco's world is corridors and portraits and doors that never quite feel like they belong to him. Malfoy Manor stretches out in polished stone and echoing steps, a place where even a child's footsteps sound like they should apologize. The ancestral faces in gilt frames look down as he walks past, weighing him, measuring him, silently asking whether he will be worthy of the name engraved on the silver door plates. His nursery is not soft, it is curated. A toy broom, child-sized but beautifully made, leans against a carved wardrobe. He learns to balance before he learns to fall, because Malfoys do not fall. On a low table, a wizard's chess set waits. One pawn has a tiny, almost invisible mark carved into its base. A twisted skull and serpent reduced to a child's scale. A miniature dark mark disguised as ornament. He has been planning this match, Lucius says, arranging the board so that Draco learns which pieces are sacrificed and which are protected at all costs. There is a book, heavy and green, that appears on Draco's lap as soon as he can read. Family history, crests, alliances, lists of Hogwarts houses like ledgers, page after page of Malfoys in Slytherin, inked in precise script, dates and honours, recorded as if the past were a contract. Gryffindor appears only in the margins, if at all, usually next to words like impulsive or vulgar. Draco runs his fingers down the Slytherin column until the paper goes shiny under his touch. He knows where his name is supposed to go. Lucius's lessons are never only about spells. They're about sorting. At the breakfast table, in the drawing room, walking the long gallery, he threads house identity into every story. Slytherin is destiny, he says, the natural home of those with vision. Hufflepuff is for plodders. Ravenclaw for people who think too much and act too little. Gryffindor, reckless children who mistake noise for courage. Narcissa watches them. Sometimes she looks at Draco, then at the green book, and something flickers in her expression before it smooths away. Draco learns, early, that deviation is shame. A distant cousin who ended up in another house is mentioned once, with a tight smile, then never again. The portraits seem to lean in when Lucius speaks, as if the walls themselves are listening for any hint of disloyalty. The message is clear. The hat may sit on your head, but it already knows the right answer. Inside that structure, Draco's own motivations grow like vines trained along iron bars. He wants his father's approval the way other children want sweets. He practices his posture in the mirror, his smirk, his drawl. He has been planning this entrance to Hogwarts for years, building it out of overheard conversations and carefully chosen stories, rehearsing clever insults under his breath so they will fall from his tongue, as if he thought of them in the moment. Weakness is dangerous. Uncertainty is worse. At night, when the house is quieter and the portraits have dimmed, he lies awake and imagines the great hall. 4 tables, 4 colours. His mind always drags the red and gold one into the shadows, makes it ridiculous, loud, easy to laugh at. It has to be, because what would it mean if the hat hesitated? September 1st, platform 9 and 3/4. Steam, owls, the rush of families saying, careful, right, don't forget. Draco walks with his trunk floating just ahead of him, Lucius's hand light on his shoulder, Narcissa's kiss a cool brush against his hair. The world smells of metal and smoke, and the sharp excitement of other children who do not know everything has already been decided for them. On the train, he finds Crabbe and Goyle as if the seats were reserved. He looks at them, weighs them, decides they will do. He leans back, lets his voice carry. Of course, I'll be in Slytherin, he says, casual, almost bored. Every Malfoy has. It's practically a formality. They nod, impressed, and the carriage fills with the comfortable certainty he has been building his whole life. But when the countryside begins to move outside the window, when the laughter fades and the rhythm of the train settles into his bones, a thin, unwelcome thread of anxiety winds through his chest. It is small, almost nothing, and he buries it under another story about the superiority of purebloods. Still, for just a moment, as the castle's distant silhouette comes into view, he wonders what it would feel like if the hat said something else. He does not say that aloud. He would not dare. Yet the thought lingers, quiet and stubborn, as the train rushes him toward a future he thinks he already knows. The hall is too bright. Candles hang in mid-air, their flames steady in a ceiling that looks like the night sky outside, ink black, scattered with cold stars. The murmur of hundreds of voices folds in on itself as McGonagall calls his name. Draco Malfoy. His world narrows to the stretch of stone between him and the stool. He walks, back straight, steps measured. He has been planning this since before he could read, since the first story his father ever told him ended with. And of course, as a proper Malfoy, he was in Slytherin. The Slytherin table to his right stills, a collective intake of breath. He can feel their eyes. Worse, he can feel the imagined weight of Lucius's gaze from the staff table, burning between his shoulder blades like a brand. The hat comes down, the hall vanishes, darkness, a smell of dust and old wool and something older, like parchment that has heard too many secrets. Ah, a familiar voice, dry and amused, curls through his thoughts. Another Malfoy. Of course, he thinks sharply. Slytherin. Let us get on with it. He pictures emerald banners, silver serpents, the approving nods, the letters already drafted to influential families. He knows everything about how this is supposed to go. Gryffindor is for reckless idiots. Hufflepuff for plodding nobodies. Ravenclaw for people who forget there is a world outside their books, and underneath a small, tight fear. What if he fails them? The hat hums, a low vibration in his skull. Ambitious, yes. Proud. You have been taught exactly what to want. But there is more. He bristles. There is nothing more, isn't there? The hat asks, almost gently. I see a boy who will walk into danger rather than admit he is afraid, who will insult a stranger on a train, not because he hates him, but because he is terrified of being the one rejected. That is a kind of courage, you know. Courage? He almost laughs. I am not a Gryffindor. No, the hat says, and now it is thoughtful. Not yet, but you could be. Fierce, reckless, capable of bold defiance when pushed to a wall. In Slytherin, that recklessness will be sharpened by the wrong hands, fed with the wrong promises. It would be easy, expected, dangerous in all the wrong ways. Images flicker, dark robes, a skull mask, his father's hand heavy on his shoulder, a mark burning on his arm. The vision is gone before he can grasp it, leaving only a cold echo. Gryffindor, the hat continues, would be harder, lonelier. You would sit beneath scarlet and gold while your name is whispered like a scandal. You would have to build respect, not inherit it. But you might learn to choose your own path, rather than the one written for you in another man's letter. He thinks of that stubborn thought on the train, the one he buried under talk of blood and superiority. What if the hat said something else? He has been planning this life. Yes, but the plan suddenly looks thin, almost nothing, compared to the weight of the choice pressing down on him now. Lucius will be furious, he thinks. Narcissa will be disappointed. Every pure blood at that table will look at him like a traitor. And yet, somewhere beyond the cloth and darkness, he can sense Potter, Weasley, the muggle-born girl with the wild hair and sharp eyes. He looks at her, she looks at him. Not yet in truth, but the feeling is there, suspended, waiting. If you send me to Gryffindor, he thinks, everything will break. Or mend, the hat replies, more than any description could contain. The pause stretches, the hall holds its breath. Better be. Gryffindor. Silence. Not cheering. Not yet. Just a stunned, ringing stillness as the hat's shout crashes against stone and banner and bone. Draco's fingers clutch the stool. He forces himself to look up. Scarlet and gold swim in his vision. The Slytherin table is a line of pale, shocked faces. At the staff table, someone's goblet stops halfway to their lips. Draco's eyes are wide, almost silver in the candlelight, as one clear thought cuts through the roar, beginning to rise around him. Nothing will go to plan now. He stands on the edge of the step, frozen, not yet walking toward the lion's table, as the world he thought he knew tilts, waiting to see which way he will fall. The hall exhales at once, a scrape of benches, a hiss of whispers, a rustle like wings beating against stone. Then the noise sharpens around a single word passing from table to table, house to house, as if the whole school needs to confirm it heard correctly. Malfoy. Harry hears it from the Hufflepuffs first, half curious. Then from the Ravenclaws, clipped and analytical. At the Slytherin table, it lands like an insult. Chairs slam back. A tall boy with a prefect badge stands so fast his goblet overturns. Pumpkin juice bleeding across green and silver. Faces turn up to the staff table, searching for correction, for some sign this is a joke. It is not. Draco begins to walk. Each step is stiff, mechanical, like he is forcing his body to move through the wrong story. Harry watches the set of his shoulders, the way his hand tightens on the edge of his robe. He remembers that pale, pointed face, pressed against the compartment door on the train. The sneer for Ron's hand-me-downs. The casual insult for Hagrid, as if a half-giant and a friend of Harry's is something to be stepped around. He has been planning this, Harry realizes suddenly. Not Gryffindor, but everything else. The house, the friends, the alliances, all of it arranged in his head like chess pieces on a board his father drew for him. And now the board has been kicked over in front of the whole magical world. Ron makes a low sound beside him, half groan, half laugh, with no humour in it. "Brilliant," he mutters, a word dragged through mud. Dad's always said, you can tell a lot about a man by the way a Malfoy talks to a clerk at Gringotts. And now we're meant to sleep in the same tower as one. He shifts on the bench, inching away from the empty space where Draco will have to sit. His ears are red. His knuckles are white on the table edge. Harry looks at him. He looks at Harry. A moment of understanding passes between them. Neither of them wanted this. At the staff table, McGonagall's mouth is a thin, disbelieving line. Snape looks as if someone has reached into his stores and smashed every carefully labelled jar. His eyes follow Draco with a sharp, proprietary anger, as though the boy has been stolen from under his hand. Dumbledore looks almost pleased. His gaze rests on Draco, like a weight and a welcome at once. Blue eyes thoughtful behind his half-moon spectacles. There is a hint of amusement there, but not cruel, more like a man watching a chess game take an unexpected turn he had quietly hoped for. If the Malfoy heir sits under the lion banner, what might that do to old loyalties, to old wars? Draco reaches the table. Every conversation dies. Benches edge away a fraction, as if pulled by the same invisible hand. No one offers to make room. He has to pull the bench himself, wood scraping loud in the silence. He sits, back straight, jaw clenched so tight Harry can see the muscle jump. Food appears on the platters in a rush of scent and steam, but Draco does not move. His plate stays empty. His hands stay flat on the table, fingers pressed together, as if this is another test he can pass by sheer force of will. Across the hall, the Slytherins glare, a line of cold green eyes. Around him, Gryffindors mutter behind their hands, trying and failing not to stare. For one suspended moment, Draco Malfoy belongs nowhere at all. And the castle, watching, seems to be waiting to see who will move first. The dormitory is too warm. Scarlet hangings, gold tassels, the low crackle of a fire that has been burning since before any of them were born. 4 beds, 4 trunks, 4 boys pretending not to look at each other as they unpack the first night of this new world. Harry sets Hedwig's cage down, fingers lingering on the bars. Ron wrestles with a trunk that looks like it has survived 3 older brothers and at least 1 explosion. Neville is already apologizing to the bedpost he bumps into. Draco stands just inside the threshold, taking it all in like it is a test he has not revised for. Gryffindor is clutter. A knitted blanket folded at the foot of Ron's bed. A chocolate frog card already stuck to the headboard. Someone's old scarf left on the floor. The air smells of smoke and wool and something sweet drifting up from the kitchens. Malfoy Manor is cold stone, polished wood, portraits that look down and judge. This room feels like a cupboard that has exploded into colour. He drops his trunk by the bed, furthest from the door, as if distance alone can restore some kind of order. Silver clasps, embossed crest, everything folded, everything in its place. Robes tailored, shirts starched, a set of dragonhide gloves that still smell faintly of oil. Object inventory as armour. Ron's trunk yawns open beside him. A chipped chess knight, a jumper with an initial knitted into the front, books with corners gone soft from too many hands, a wand that does not quite match its owner. Draco looks, and the old habits rise before he can stop them. Did the shop run out of new things, Weasley? Or is this a family tradition? His voice is light, almost bored. Almost. Ron goes red to the ears. At least I've got a family that wants to give me things. Neville, halfway through, untangling his pajamas from Trevor's box, freezes. He has been planning this year as a quiet disaster at best. This is more than he expected. Draco's gaze flicks to Neville's shaking hands. Careful, Longbottom. Wouldn't want you to trip and set the curtains on fire. Again. He does not know about the again. It is a guess. It lands anyway. The room tightens. House lines would usually do the work here. Gryffindor closes ranks. Slytherin sneers from a safe distance. But the lion on Draco's chest complicates everything. Harry hears himself speak before he decides to. If you're going to live here, he says, maybe don't start by insulting everyone in the room. Draco turns. He looks at Harry. Harry looks back. A moment of understanding passes between them, though neither of them could name it. Not friendship. Not yet. Something like mutually assured destruction. And if I don't take advice from you, Potter, Draco asks, chin lifting just enough to be a challenge. Then don't, Harry says. Just don't make this worse. We all have to sleep here. His voice is flat, but his eyes do not move. He has been planning this conversation since the train, without knowing it. Every time Draco's name brushed against his like flint against stone, Neville exhales. Ron mutters something into his pillow that might be agreement. The fire pops, sending up a brief spray of sparks, as if the castle is listening. Later, the room goes dark. Curtains drawn, 4 red canopies like lowered banners. Harry's breathing evens out first, then Ron's, then Neville's soft, uncertain snores. Draco lies on his back, staring at the red above him. Too bright, too loud, even in silence. There is no cool green, no carved serpent, no familiar drawl from the next bed over. No Slytherin common room to walk back to if this goes wrong. He counts the other boys' breaths, measures the distance to the door, wonders, for the first time, what happens if he cannot go home the way he planned. The banners do not answer. The castle waits. The common room is red and restless and awake. Monday morning. Draco walks down from the dormitory in scarlet robes that do not feel like his. The lion on his chest glares up at him every time he looks down, as if daring him to say he belongs somewhere else. Conversations dip when he passes. Then someone calls, "Hey, Malfoy, you coming to breakfast?" from one of the armchairs by the fire. He flinches. Only a fraction, a tightening at the corner of his mouth, a pause in his walk. Malfoy, but said in a Gryffindor accent, over a table stacked with toast and jam instead of silver and crystal. It sounds wrong. It sounds exposed, like hearing the family vault number read out loud in the middle of Gringotts. Classes do not help. Transfiguration first, with McGonagall's sharp eyes tracking every movement. Draco sets his books down in a neat line. New quill, new ink. The same name on the top of the parchment. When Hermione raises her hand and launches into a precise definition, he cuts across her with a soft, practiced sneer. Not quite, Granger. If you'd actually read the advanced commentary, you'd know partial transfiguration on living tissue has been restricted for decades. He has been planning this sort of thing his whole life. The right correction, the right tilt of the chin, the right invocation of authority. My father says the ministry is terrified of anything it can't control. He lets the words fall into the room like a challenge. Some of the Gryffindors roll their eyes. Hermione's jaw sets. McGonagall's mouth thins, but she only says, 5 points to Gryffindor. For additional context, Mr. Malfoy. 10 to Miss Granger for answering the question asked. Boldness, not cunning. The message is clear. The house around him cheers when someone attempts a transformation that is far beyond the lesson and nearly explodes their matchstick. McGonagall sighs, then says, "That was reckless, but impressive nerve. Points awarded for nerve, not for precision." In Charms, he brags about the Nimbus waiting at home, about private tutors, about dueling practice in the drawing room. Father says I could make the house team in second year. He watches Weasley's ears go red, watches Potter look over with that unreadable, measuring gaze. He looks at her. She looks at him. Hermione's eyes flick between them, already calculating what this new configuration means. Gryffindor pushes back in quieter ways. Percy corners him outside the portrait hole, prefect badge gleaming, a lecture about house unity, about how they stand together in the face of Slytherin provocation, about how family feuds do not dictate school loyalties. The words are polite, but the subtext is not optional. Draco nods at the right places, says, "Of course," in a smooth voice that hides the way his stomach twists. The crack appears on Wednesday, a jostle in the corridor, Slytherin's second year's wand already half raised. Neville Longbottom stumbling backward. It is instinct, not thought, that moves Draco's hand. He steps between them, robe sleeve brushing Neville's, his own wand flicking down in a sharp, warning line. "Try hexing someone who can actually defend himself," he says, voice cold. The Slytherin hesitates, then sneers and turns away. Only then does Draco realize what he has done. Neville looks at him like he has seen something new, more than any description could contain. "Don't just stand there, Longbottom," Draco snaps, heat rising to his face. "Watch where you're going. You'll get yourself killed tripping over your own feet." He walks off before anyone can call it bravery. That night, the common room empties slowly. Laughter fades up the stairs. Firelight softens the edges of the furniture. Draco stands alone before the notice board, reading names etched in gold ink under words like Quidditch captain, head boy, special award for services to the school. All Gryffindors, all stories of charging in, of standing up, of doing the thing anyway because it was right, not because it was advantageous. He traces a finger just above one of the names, not quite touching. Is there a version of Draco Malfoy that fits on this board? One that does not feel like a betrayal written in red ink over silver script? The castle does not answer. The lion on his chest waits. And somewhere deep inside, a new plan begins to form, one he does not yet dare to name. The broom is already in his hand when he realizes everyone is watching. Morning light on the Hogwarts lawn. First flying lesson, Gryffindor and Slytherin lined up together like two opposing ledgers waiting to be balanced. Neville's broom has already betrayed him. The distant thud of his fall still echoing when Madame Hooch vanishes with him toward the hospital wing. The remembrall glints on the grass. Draco steps forward before he can think better of it. Old habits, new colours. He toses it up, lets it fall into his palm with practiced ease, voice carrying far too clearly. A trinket for someone who clearly can't handle a proper broom. The red and gold on his robes turn the words sideways. The Slytherins smirk. The Gryffindors stiffen. For a heartbeat, no one is sure which side of the line he stands on. Harry feels the heat rise in his chest, not just at the insult, but at the way it sounds wrong in their house, like a crack in the lion's stone. He has been planning this year as a fresh start, a world where he is not just the boy from the cupboard. And now there is a Malfoy between him and the sky. Give it here, Malfoy. The challenge leaves his mouth before Hermione's sharp intake of breath can catch it. Draco looks at him. He looks at Draco. The name Potter tastes like a dare. The chase is the same and not the same. Brooms shoot upwards, wind in their faces. The castle walls are blur. Harry dives, not to impress Slytherin, but to prove that Gryffindor courage is not something a Malfoy can toy with. When he pulls out of the dive with the Remembrall in his hand, the roar from the red and gold side is louder, more complicated, more than any description could contain. McGonagall's arrival slices through the noise. Her eyes are sharp, taking in Draco's hovering posture, Harry's grip on the glass ball, the way the Slytherins and Gryffindors have unconsciously split around them. Potter. That was reckless and astonishing flying. 10 points to Gryffindor. Her gaze flicks to Draco, cool, assessing. And you, Mr. Malfoy. You may find that in this house, even a Malfoy can learn what real courage looks like. The words land harder than any scolding. Draco flushes, jaw tight. The Slytherins bristle. The Gryffindors shift, reassessing him as if he were a new entry on a Gringotts ledger. Hermione files it away. She has been planning her questions since the Sorting Hat shouted Gryffindor over that pale blonde head. She knows the Malfoy name from books, from quiet ministry letters her parents never quite explained. Blood purity, old alliances, the kind of magical politics Harry is only beginning to see. That night in the common room, parchment and ink between them, the tension finally snaps. Draco scoffs at a muggle-born wizard cited in one of their essays. The word mudblood hovering in the air like poison he is almost comfortable breathing. Hermione does not let it land. No. Say what you mean, Malfoy. Explain it. To us. She looks at him. He looks at her. A moment of understanding passes between them. Not friendly, but precise. She will not let this go, and he will not back down without a fight. He has never had to defend these beliefs to equals before. To someone who can quote laws and lineage charts and Gringotts rulings on blood inheritance with calm, relentless accuracy. Harry watches, silent, as Draco stumbles from memorized phrases into something raw, less certain, the edges of his world fraying under Hermione's questions. So why am I in your house then? Draco finally snaps. If I'm so wrong. Because the Hat thought you could be better, Hermione says, or braver, or both. The air between them hums. Then Percy Weasley's voice cuts through, prim and indignant, lecturing about noise levels and house points and first years setting bad examples. All three turn on him with identical glares, united for one fragile instant in their annoyance. Percy retreats, muttering. They look at each other, the argument unfinished, the lines between them redrawn but not erased. None of them notice the quiet figure on the stairs, listening, already deciding how this fragile triangle might be used. The stadium is a bowl of noise, an autumn light. Red and gold banners snapping, brooms glinting, the air itself charged like a held breath. 2 weeks earlier. McGonagall stands on the edge of the pitch with a clipboard, lips thinner than usual. Harry hovers 10 feet up, uncertain. Draco is already in the air, posture perfect, nimbus humming under his hands. She has been planning this since that first flying lesson, since she watched one boy dive like a mad thing for Neville's Remembrall, and the other track him with the cold precision of someone who has paid for every lesson gold can buy. Both of you, she says now, voice cutting through the wind. We'll play Seeker for Gryffindor. Oliver Wood almost drops his whistle. 2 Seekers, 2 first years, 2 boys who look at each other like opposing generals. He recovers fast. He has been planning this in his own way, sketching lineups in the margins of his homework, dreaming of cups and banners and his name in Quidditch history. If he can turn this rivalry into fuel, the world will remember this team. Early practices are chaos wrapped in potential. Harry and Draco streak across the sky, twin comets in scarlet, racing invisible snitches only they can see. They shout insults as they pass, breath snatched by the wind. "Too slow, Potter." "Try aiming where I'm going, Malfoy." Wood circles below, eyes bright, seeing not arguments but angles, coverage, options. 2 Seekers means one can harry the opposing Seeker, while the other hunts the snitch. 2 Seekers means opponents never feel safe. On the stands, Gryffindors watch with crossed arms and narrowed eyes. Some whisper that this is wrong, that a Malfoy in their colours is an insult stitched into every stitch of the lion banner. Others fall silent when Draco pulls off a brutal, spiralling dive to intercept a quaffle about to slip past Katie Bell, wrenching his broom sideways at the last second, saving the goal by inches. It looks reckless. It looks like something only a Gryffindor would try. The house begins to split along quieter lines. Angelina admits, grudgingly, that he can fly. Fred and George exchange a look that is more than any description could contain. Even Ron, sulking on the bench, cannot quite deny what he sees. Then comes the bludger. It is a practice match, full speed, no reservations. A bludger screams toward Harry's unprotected side. Perfectly timed, a brutal arc. Draco sees it first. There is no thought, no plan, just motion. He leans hard, rams his shoulder into Harry, knocks him out of the path and into a wild spin. The bludger slams into Draco's ribs with a sickening crack. From the stands, it looks like a sacrifice. From the pitch to from inside Draco's own shock, it feels like something else. He had been aiming to get there first, to be the one who beat the bludger, who proved he saw more, moved faster. Instinctive competitiveness, not friendship. But courage does not care about motives in the moment. Madame Hooch blows her whistle. Wood is shouting. The team descends in a flurry of robes and panic. Harry lands hard, breathless, heart hammering. Draco clutches his side, white with pain, but refusing to let go of his broom. Later, in the changing room, the noise of the stadium muffled to a distant roar, they sit on opposite benches. Both are bruised, sweat drying on their skin, adrenaline still humming. Harry looks at him. He looks at Harry. "You're insane," Harry says quietly. "You're welcome," Draco answers, just as low. They look at each other, the air between them sharp, uncertain. A moment of understanding passes between them, not friendship. Not yet, but the shared, dawning realization that together, under the same lion, they could make Gryffindor terrifying. Wood, listening outside the door, already knows. He has been planning this. The castle smells of roast pumpkin and wood smoke. Candles float above a sea of black robes and bright house colours. The great hall alive with laughter that feels for a moment like the safest place in the world. Draco does not feel safe. He sits at the Gryffindor table between Harry and Ron, picking at treacle tart he would normally devour. He has been planning this term as a careful performance, the perfect Malfoy heir in a house that does not want him. Every look calibrated, every word a shield. But when Quirrell bursts through the doors, turban askew, and gasps out, "Troll! In the dungeons! Thought you ought to know. The shield cracks. His first reaction is pure, cold fear. His second is to bury it. Brilliant security, he mutters, loud enough for nearby Gryffindors to hear. Perhaps next they'll invite a dragon in for dessert. His tone is mocking, the old Malfoy drawl, but his fingers are white around his goblet. Harry notices. Hermione, 2 seats down, notices. She looks away first. The hall erupts into panic and orders. Percy shouts. Dumbledore's voice booms. They walk in lines toward the dormitories, red and gold streaming through the corridors like a living banner. In the confusion, Harry hears Ron say it. Hermione, where is she? Harry stops. Ron crashes into his back. Draco, behind them, almost collides with both. He looks annoyed. Then he sees Harry's face. She doesn't know about the troll. Hermione had left in tears after Ron's careless words. The realization hits all 3 at once. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. Not about friendship, about responsibility. Granger's in the girls' bathroom, Ron says. We have to go. Draco opens his mouth to say something cutting. A Gryffindor being killed on his watch. A Malfoy in the same house, unable to prevent it. The humiliation would echo through every pure-blood drawing room his father has ever ruled. The thought is more than any description could contain. I'm coming, he says instead. You'd get yourselves killed without me. They break from the line. They walk fast, then run against the tide of students. Harry leads, wand out, heart pounding. He has been planning this in smaller ways, imagining danger, imagining courage. But this is real stone, real echoes, the real smell of something foul ahead. Ron follows, muttering spells under his breath. Draco counts turns, windows, escape routes, as if the castle is a Gringotts vault he must memorize before it closes. The bathroom is chaos, smashed sinks. Hermione pressed against the far wall, eyes huge. The troll turns, club dragging, stupid face twisting toward the smallest movement. Harry shouts, waving his arms. The troll lumbers toward him. For a heartbeat, Draco freezes. This is not a practice dummy in a Malfoy dueling room. This is towering flesh and stone-thick skin. Then the lessons snap into place. Confundus! Draco's spell cracks against the troll's temple in a spray of light. It is not strong enough to control a mind that simple, but it is enough to make the creature flinch, to make its eyes slide away from Harry and toward the shattered mirrors. Harry dives between its legs, adrenaline burning away thought. Ron, voice shaking, yells, Wingardium Leviosa! The club jerks, rises, hangs. For a second, it looks almost comical, a toy in the air. Then it drops. The impact shakes the floor. Silence. The troll collapses. Hermione slides down the wall, shaking. Harry looks at her. She looks at him. Then, unexpectedly, her gaze goes to Draco. He is breathing hard, hair mussed, wand still raised as if he cannot quite believe he used it for this. Footsteps thunder closer. McGonagall bursts in, followed by Quirrell and Snape. The scene is damning. 3 first years, 1 unconscious troll, 1 terrified girl. What were you thinking? McGonagall's voice is sharp enough to cut stone. She lists rules, dangers, the sheer idiocy of facing a mountain of muscle with children's spells. Harry takes the blame. Ron stammers agreement. Draco lifts his chin and says, We couldn't leave her. Hermione speaks over him. It was my fault, Professor. I went looking for somewhere quiet. They came to warn me. If anyone should be punished, it's me. McGonagall looks at her, then at the boys. Something shifts. Recklessness, yes. but also the exact kind of courage her house is meant to teach. 5 points will be taken for your disobedience, she says at last, and 20 points awarded to each of you for... Her mouth tightens, then softens. Reckless, but undeniably brave behavior. In the corridor afterward, the four of them stand in an awkward knot. No one quite meets anyone's eyes at first. Then Harry looks at Draco. Draco looks back. Hermione watches both of them, mind already turning, recalculating. Ron scuffs his shoe against the stone. So, Ronna says finally, voice rough. Next time we decide to fight a troll, maybe we plan it a bit better. So do I, Draco answers, before he can stop himself. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. Not just about survival this time. About the strange, reluctant bond that has formed in a ruined bathroom, under a fallen troll, in a castle that is slowly rewriting who they are allowed to be. The world outside still thinks of a Malfoy as a future Death Eater, and Harry as a lone savior. None of them know about the quartet walking back to Gryffindor Tower, steps uneven but in sync, already pulling the story off its old rails. The fire is low, and the common room is almost empty. Shadows stretch long over scarlet rugs and carved chairs. 4 first years lean over a table, scattered with parchment, chocolate frog cards, and one badly drawn diagram of the 3rd floor corridor. Late November. Hogwarts is wrapped in wind and rumour. The break-in at Gringotts. The Halloween troll. The forbidden corridor that Dumbledore mentioned once and then never again. Harry looks at the diagram, then at Draco. Draco is already watching him, pale face tight, fingers drumming a nervous rhythm that does not match his drawling voice. Snape is not trying to steal anything, Draco says. He has been planning this lesson sequence for years. My father respects him. He says Snape is reliable. The word tastes strange in a Gryffindor mouth. Ron snorts. Yeah, reliable at being creepy and lurking around you in a Quidditch match. Draco rounds on him. You saw him muttering. I saw Quirrell, shaking, sweating, stammering, and somehow always near whatever goes wrong. Father met him once, years ago, at the bank. Said he was ambitious, always asking questions about old artifacts and protections. Then he disappears, comes back with a ridiculous turban and a smell like something rotting. Hermione looks up from her notes. She has been listing every odd thing since September, building a case the way she thinks a proper ministry investigator might. She does not like that Draco keeps adding details she never could have known, but she writes them down anyway. What did your father say about Gringotts? She asks, voice careful. Draco hesitates. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, thin and brittle. There were rumors, he says, about someone trying to get into one of the high security vaults this summer. Father got a letter from one of his associates. Said you-know-who's old followers were looking for something. Old magic. Stone, weapon, no one knew. Only that it might have been moved the same day Hagrid took you to the bank, Potter. Harry feels the room tilt. He remembers the carts, the speed, the dragon-guarded depths. The goblin's sharp eyes when they spoke about his blood inheritance test. He has been planning this conversation in the back of his mind without knowing it, collecting every odd look, every half-finished sentence from the adults who think children never notice anything. So, you think Quirrell is after the stone, Hermione says slowly, and not Snape. I think, Draco answers, that if Snape wanted it, he wouldn't be this clumsy, and Father says the headmaster trusts him. He doesn't say that about many people. Hermione hates that this fits, that Draco's pure-blood gossip about Gringotts, about old families whispering over dinner, about being almost used as a messenger boy for veiled threats, actually sharpens their picture instead of blurring it. She hates his prejudice, the way he talks about Muggleborns as if they are a problem to be managed. But his knowledge of the magical world is more than any description could contain. Fine, she says. We consider both, Snape and Quirrell. We cross-check everything. Draco leans back, eyes glinting. Or, he says softly, you use me. The Malfoy name opens doors. If I write a letter, if I ask questions at home over Christmas, people will answer. They will assume I'm loyal. We could know who funded what, who moved which artifact, which families are nervous. Ron stiffens. So we just trust your father. You trust that he underestimates me, Draco snaps. Then, quieter. He thinks I'm a child. He forgets children listen. They look at each other, 4 points of a crooked compass. Harry sees the path Draco is offering. Influence, information, a way to fight this as lords and heirs and political players, not just school children sneaking around. But he also sees the third-floor corridor in his dreams, the locked door, the heavy trap door, the sense that someone has been testing the protections step by step. We can't wait, Harry says. If someone is going after the stone, it will be soon. Exams, end of term, everyone distracted, Dumbledore away. Hermione's quill stills. She knows he is right. She also knows every rule this will break. Ron is already nodding, jaw set. Draco slams his hand on the table. This is madness. You have a lordship, Potter. Granger, you practically live in the library. We can leverage that. Letters, alliances. We don't crawl through trapdoors like reckless Gryffindors. Harry meets his eyes. We do both. Later we use names and rings. Tonight we make sure there is still a stone to argue over. Silence. The fire pops. Draco exhales, long and thin. Gryffindors really are suicidal, he mutters. He stands anyway, straightens his robes, and walks toward the portrait hole with them. None of them notice the soft scrape of movement above, in the girl's staircase, or the way one shadow lingers a heartbeat too long before slipping away. Stone corridors, cold drafts. The castle feels different when you walk into danger on purpose. They slip through the locked door, past the sleeping three-headed dog, and drop into darkness. The impact knocks the breath from Draco's lungs. Something soft closes over his arms, his chest, his throat. It tightens. He has read about Devil's Snare. He has not felt it trying to crush his ribs. Panic hits fast and bright. This is not a classroom. No teacher. No safety net. Just the plant and the dark and the sound of Harry swearing somewhere to his left. Draco's wand hand jerks, useless, and he hears Hermione's voice, thin and fierce, ordering them to stop struggling. Heat, light, blue-white fire. The plant recoils. They drop. He lies on the stone for a second, shaking. He knows the Malfoy family has enemies. He knows his father talks about the Dark Lord, like a ghost who might come back if the world is foolish enough. But this is the first time Draco has felt something trying to kill him for real, not as a story told over brandy in a drawing room. They walk on. The room of flying keys looks like a nightmare, and a jewel box at once, a storm of glittering wings and metal. Draco stares up, half disgusted, half fascinated, at the bent feathers and sharp little beaks. Of course Dumbledore would make a game out of it. Of course he has been planning this. Harry grabs a broom. Ron follows. Draco hesitates one heartbeat, then reaches for the third. The air is cold and sharp in his face as they rise into the swarm. His stomach twists when a key slices past his cheek, leaving a thin line of blood. But underneath the fear, there is a pulse of something else. Competition. Precision. Catch the right key before Potter does. They land with the broken winged key in hand. The next door opens onto the chessboard. He knows wizard chess. Every pureblood child does. But he has never stood where the pieces stand, feeling the weight of the board around him. Ron explains, quick and clipped, how they will have to take the places of the missing pieces. Draco listens, looks at the Black Queen, the knights, the looming king. "I'll take the bishop," he hears himself say before he can think better of it. Ron blinks. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Draco's voice comes out sharper than he intends. "I am not going to be the one who hid behind a girl and a Weasley when people tell this story." He looks at Hermione. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, thin as glass. There and gone. The game begins. Stone shatters. Pieces fall. When Ron sacrifices himself, the crash of the knight hitting the floor is more than any description could contain. Draco's hands are shaking so hard he can barely keep his wand steady as they drag Ron's limp body to the side. This is not about house points. This is about someone trying to bring back the Dark Lord his father still calls my lord. In old letters, Draco is not meant to see. If they fail, if the stone is taken, what happens when Voldemort looks at a Gryffindor Malfoy and decides he has chosen wrong? At the potions riddle, Snape's logic lines the shelves in neat, deadly ranks. Hermione reads, thinks, solves. Only one bottle leads forward, one back. The rest, poison. Harry reaches for the forward bottle. Draco sees his hand tremble. Harry sees Draco's do the same, even as Draco steps slightly in front of Hermione without seeming to move. They look at each other. Harry's eyes are dark, intent, seeing more than the sneer and the name. He nods once. "I'll go on. You three go back, get Ron out. Tell McGonagall. Tell everyone." Draco wants to argue. He does not. The thought of walking toward Voldemort makes his bones feel hollow. The thought of walking away while Potter goes alone is worse. Harry drinks. Flame roars, then clears. He is gone. The backward potion waits. Draco stands between Ron's unconscious form and the black fire, feeling the cost of every step they have taken. When they go back through, he will have to explain what he has just risked. For a boy his father might call enemy, and a world his family might be helping to end. He takes the bottle with unsteady fingers, knowing there is no way back to who he was at breakfast. The house is too quiet when he steps through the flue. Summer, 1992. Malfoy Manor. The air smells of polish and old magic, of something preserved and sharpened over generations. White peacocks move beyond the tall windows like ghosts. The hall is all marble and shadow, portraits watching. Draco stands there with soot on his shoes and a trunk banded in scarlet and gold at his side. A house elf appears, thin hands twisting. It looks at the trunk, at the edge of red peeking from the brass latch, and its eyes flinch away as if the colour burns. Another elf joins it, then another. None of them speak. None of them meet his gaze. They only bow, low and shaking, and vanish with soft cracks, leaving the echo of the hall and the weight of the manor pressing in. He has been planning this conversation since the train pulled out of Hogsmeade, rehearsing lines the way other boys rehearse Quidditch plays. Gryffindor as opportunity, Gryffindor as mask, Gryffindor as a way to get close to the boy who lived. But the plan feels thin now, standing on cold stone under his ancestors' eyes. Dinner is a long table with 3 place settings and far too much silver. Lucius sits at the head, cane resting against his chair, expression carved in ice. Narcissa is a pale flame at his right, hands folded, posture perfect. Draco takes the left, aware of every clink of cutlery, every tick of the enchanted clock on the far wall. So, Lucius does not look at him at first. He looks at the goblet, at the candle flame, at the dark wood panels, then, finally, at the red trim on Draco's school robe. Gryffindor. The word lands like a verdict. Draco's throat is dry. The hat saw potential, strategic potential. Potter is there. We share a dorm, classes, a Quidditch team. If our allies want influence over him, this is the best position. I can watch him. I can steer him. It's only a colour on a banner. Lucius's smile is thin. No Malfoy has ever worn that colour. His voice is soft, almost bored, but the air tightens. House is not merely a banner. It is blood, reputation, allegiance. Lions rush in where serpents calculate, and those who forget their blood, Draco, often find the world very unforgiving. He speaks of the right side without naming it, of a time coming when old families will be called. When that moment arrives, you will answer as a Malfoy, not as a schoolboy lion. You understand? It is not a question. Draco nods. He understands everything and nothing. Narcissa has barely spoken. Now she sets down her fork with a sound that is almost a tremor. Does he treat you well? This Potter boy. Her eyes are on Draco's face, not his robe. Are you safe in that tower? He looks at her. She looks at him. For a heartbeat, the hall, the portraits, Lucius himself fall away. He remembers fire, chess pieces shattering, Ron falling, Harry standing in front of a mirror with death in the room. I'm alive, Draco says. We all are, because we stood together. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. There is fear in her gaze, but something else too. Something like the faintest hope that scarlet walls might keep certain invitations from ever reaching her son. Later, in his childhood bedroom, the manor feels larger than the whole magical world. Shelves of Quidditch books. A toy broom he has not touched in years. A desk with neat stacks of parchment and a Gringotts statement bearing the Malfoy crest. The trunk sits at the foot of his bed, its red edging almost loud in the blue-tinged light. He opens it slowly. Robes, textbooks, a Gryffindor scarf, frayed slightly where it caught on a suit of armor during one late-night run. His hand rests on the wool. He remembers the common room fire, the way the other boys shouted his name when he caught the snitch, the moment he chose to step forward instead of step aside. Pride flickers. He survived. He helped. Then his father's voice overlays it, cool and cutting. No Malfoy has ever. Draco folds the scarf and slides it into the bottom drawer of his desk, beneath old letters and a childhood sketch of a dragon. Hidden, but not discarded. When he closes the drawer, the click is very soft. He lies back on his bed and stares at the ceiling, feeling the pull of 2 futures. When the time comes, which colours will he wear where the world can see? The castle is louder this year, not in sound, though there is that too, but in undercurrents, in the way whispers walk ahead of Draco up every staircase. September 1992. The carriages roll through the rain. Draco steps down, Gryffindor scarf visible, Malfoy posture unbent. He has been planning this entrance since June, rehearsing the angle of his chin. the exact careless way his hand rests on his wand, as if nothing in his world has changed. Everything has changed. The Slytherins see him first, a cluster of green and silver by the doors, Pansy's mouth already twisting, Not's eyes narrow and bright. Traitor hangs in the air without being spoken. One first year actually flinches when Draco looks their way, as if eye contact alone might carry contamination. He feels the cut of it, cold and precise, and refuses to let it show. Inside the Great Hall, the Gryffindor table makes space for him the way water makes space around a stone. Technically, there is room on the bench. Socially, there is a careful inch of distance on either side. Ron talks over him, around him. Seamus watches him like he is a cursed object. Hermione's glance is brief, measuring, and then she returns to her schedule parchment as if he is a problem already solved. The rumours start before dessert. A hiss passed from bench to bench. The Chamber of Secrets, the heir of Slytherin, ancient blood and older magic. By breakfast the next morning, someone has helpfully connected the dots. Slytherin's heir, Malfoy. But a Malfoy in scarlet and gold makes the arithmetic awkward. If they accuse him, they accuse the hat. They accuse the house. So they ask instead. Little questions in corridors, heavy ones in the library. Do you know anything, Malfoy? Your father must have told you stories. You grew up on this. He learns to sneer on command. If I knew, do you think I'd waste it talking to you? It works, mostly. The questions do not stop. They just grow sharper. In the common room, his defense becomes attack. He talks loudly about bloodlines, about standards, about how Hogwarts is rotting from the inside. He says mudblood once, twice, 3 times, like slamming a door. The room goes very still. Hermione's face closes, not in shock, but in weary confirmation. Harry's hand tightens on the arm of the chair. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. McGonagall calls him to her office the next evening. No lecture at first. Just tea, a ledger open on her desk, the fire snapping. Then, very quietly, Mr. Malfoy, Gryffindor does not exist to launder your prejudices. We protect the vulnerable here. You will not use that word again. She does not threaten detentions. She threatens disappointment. Somehow, that lands deeper. He walks back to the tower, feeling as if his father and his head of house are pulling him in opposite directions, and he is the rope. The first attack comes on a night that smells of damp stone and fear. Harry, Ron, Hermione, Draco, and a trailing crowd round the corner to the words daubed on the wall. To Mrs. Norris, hanging stiff and silent. The corridor fills, then swells, then seals. The accusing eyes find Harry first, as they always do. Then they slide, almost irresistibly, to Draco, Gryffindor tie, Malfoy face, standing on the wrong side of the line. For one long breath, the whole school seems to be asking the same question. Whose side is he really on? He feels the weight of it settle on his shoulders. He has no answer ready. Not yet. The common room hums with fear. Whispers curl around the fire like smoke. The chamber is open. Another message on the wall. Another attack. Later, when the noise thins and the younger years drift to bed in clumps, Harry, Ron, and Hermione claim their usual corner table. Books spread. Ink bottles. A map of the castle that is not a map. Harry watches the portrait hole. Draco has gone up already, or pretended to. Hermione leans in. Her voice is low, precise. They need information from Slytherin. They need to know who's boasting, who's frightened, who's suddenly walking different corridors. The Polyjuice plan unfolds between them in careful pieces. Stolen ingredients, a month of brewing, away into the snake's den. Except the snake sleeps 2 beds over. Do we tell him? Ron asks. The word tell sounds like risk. Or spy on him too. Harry looks at Hermione. She looks at him. He has been planning this in his head for days, without quite admitting it, weighing Draco's sharp tongue against his sharper fear of his father, remembering how Draco looked at the bloody letters on the wall. Hermione hesitates. She knows what pure blood secrets look like now, after Gringotts, after blood inheritance parchment and goblin witnesses. If we treat him like a suspect, she says slowly, he'll act like one. Pattern interrupt. A shadow at the edge of the table. Draco. He has not gone to bed. He has been standing just out of sight, listening to enough words to understand the shape, if not every detail. Polyjuice, Slytherin, spy. So, he says lightly, but his hand is tight on the back of the chair. You were going to break into my common room and dose my housemates. And what? Hope I didn't notice? The air sharpens. Ron bristles. Harry's wand hand twitches. Hermione's quill stills above the page. Draco sits down instead of storming off. A choice. You want Slytherin's secrets, he says. Fine, but I'm not going to be your pet suspect while you play Aura. They look at each other, the 3 of them, then at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, thin but real. This is a bargain. What do you want? Harry asks. Treat me like an ally, Draco answers. You ask. I decide what I can answer without getting killed, and you stop looking at me like I'm writing messages in blood between classes. He talks, names old families whose parents held the dark mark and never quite paid for it. Not Avery. Some of the Lestranges by marriage. He mentions that his father has been furious about a missing artifact, an old diary that should have been safe in a warded vault, but isn't. He does not know yet that this is the hinge of the year. He only knows that Lucius Malfoy has been walking the world like a man who lost a weapon. Hermione's eyes sharpen at the word diary. Harry files it away beside the hissing voice in the walls. Weeks later, when the trail leads to Hagrid and then past him, into the trees, the alliance is tested in a different way. Fang whines. The spiders call. The forest breathes. Draco stops dead at the first glistening web the size of a bedsheet. No, he says. Absolutely not. Those are acromantulas. My father. Your father isn't here. Ron snaps, pale but moving. Come on, Malfoy, or go back and tell everyone you let 2 blood traitors and Harry Potter walk in without you. Other Gryffindors have followed them to the edge, watching. The word coward hangs unspoken, then spoken. Harry meets Draco's eyes. We're going, with or without you. The choice tastes like iron. Controlled cruelties in drawing rooms are one thing. This is another world entirely. Mud, chittering legs, eyes like wet stones. He goes. The spiders swarm. The car saves them. They tumble out of the forest together, covered in muck and spider silk, shaking with leftover terror and hysterical, breathless laughter that hurts. Draco lies on his back in the grass, staring up at the sky, lungs burning. Gryffindor danger, he realizes, is not neat. It is not rehearsed. It is not his father's careful, curated menace. It is wild, and it is shared, and it might remake him into something else entirely, more than any description could contain. The chamber is open and full of whispers, cold stone, the smell of damp and something older, reptilian. But that comes later. For now, it begins with a missing girl and a notice on the board. Ginny Weasley has not come down to breakfast. At first, Draco does not think much of it. People skive off lessons. People fake colds. Then he sees Ron's face, white and furious, and McGonagall's trembling hands as she unrolls the parchment from the staff room, and the castle seems to tilt. He remembers the day in September when he'd mocked Ginny in the corridor. Ink-stained nose, second-hand books, that battered cauldron. He drawled something about Weasleys breeding like gnomes, and how at least one of them might be useful as basilisk bait. It had been a joke that tasted like his father's voice. Now a Weasley is gone. The walls whisper about blood on the floor and messages written in red. The warnings they all laughed at suddenly look like prophecy. In the crowded common room, when McGonagall announces the closure of the school, Harry stands. He looks like someone has taken out his spine and replaced it with iron. "I know where she is," he says. "The Chamber of Secrets. I'm going." Draco feels his mouth go dry. He has been planning this year as a series of careful performances. Enough Malfoy to keep his father calm, enough Gryffindor to keep his housemates from turning on him. This is not in the plan. A basilisk is not a schoolyard duel. It is death given scales and fangs. But when McGonagall leaves and the room explodes into frightened noise, Harry catches his eye. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is not just about Ginny. It is about the diary Harry described in a low, worried voice by the fire. About the name that wrote itself in ink, Tom Marvolo Riddle, Voldemort by another shape. Draco's stomach twists. Letting a child die to bring back the Dark Lord. That is not a clever political move. It is not a distant legend. It is murder in a school he walks through every day. "I'm coming," Draco hears himself say. His voice shakes, but he does not sit down. You'll need someone who knows how he thinks. Ron swears under his breath. Hermione looks at Draco like she's trying to solve an equation that keeps changing. Then she nods once. "Fine, but we do this together." "So do I." They look at each other. Then they walk. Myrtle's bathroom, hissing pipes. The sudden, impossible slide down into darkness. Draco's robes catch on stone, tear, fill with dust. His heart beats too fast. He keeps going. The chamber opens around them, vast and cold. Serpents carved into every pillar. Harry walks forward to Ginny's small, still body. Draco hangs back, eyes on the boy unfolding from the shadows, pale and smug and wrong. Tom Riddle talks. He explains almost kindly how Ginny poured herself into the diary, how he has been planning this for months, how her death will bring him back. Draco listens, every word another crack in the stories he grew up with. When the basilisk comes, it is like the world narrows to teeth and stone, and the sound of Harry shouting in parcel tongue. Fawkes falls from the ceiling in a blaze of light. The sorting hat appears. In the chaos, Draco moves. He snatches up the fallen diary when Riddle turns, clutching it to his chest like a cursed Gringotts ledger. Ink bleeds cold against his fingers. "Potter!" he yells, throat raw. "Now!" Harry, blinded but still moving, drives the basilisk fang through the diary Draco shoves into his hand. Ink screams. Riddle tears apart like smoke. Silence. Dust. Blood. Draco stands shaking, spattered with black ink and red, staring at the ruined diary on the wet stone. Voldemort is not a distant legend in his father's study. He is a monster who almost killed a girl he mocked, a brother he shares a dorm with, a witch who argues with him over homework. More than any description could contain. And this time, Draco helped stop him. The cost of that choice will come due soon. Stone steps, cold under his hands. Draco sits halfway up the staircase that curves around the entrance hall. Gryffindor robes pooling red and gold against grey. Below, the great doors stand open. Rain hisses outside. Harry and Dobby and Lucius Malfoy are framed in the doorway like pieces in a chess problem that has been waiting all year. He has been planning this confrontation, Draco realizes. Not Father, Potter. Harry looks too calm, too deliberate. One hand on the elf's thin shoulder, the other closing around something small and blackened. The diary. Dumbledore stands a little to the side, Fawkes on his perch, eyes following every movement. McGonagall is there as well, lips pressed thin, but she says nothing. The hall feels oddly empty, as if the whole magical world is holding its breath through these few witnesses and one boy hiding on the stairs. Harry walks forward. No wand out. No flinch. He holds the ruined diary like a piece of evidence in a Gringotts dispute and says, almost conversational, that the attacks are over, that the monster is dead, that Ginny Weasley will be fine. Draco watches the way Lucius's shoulders loosen, just a fraction, at the word fine. Then Harry adds softly that she would not have needed saving if someone had not slipped this into her cauldron. The word hangs there, slipped. Dumbledore picks it up without moving. His voice is mild as he observes that such a powerful artifact could hardly have wandered into a little girl's school things by accident, that it would take planning, intent, a decision to use a child to reopen a war. Draco goes still. The memory is sharp. Flourish and blots. Father's hand shoving second-hand books at the Weasleys. The quick, contemptuous flick into the girl's cauldron. He had thought it was only a prank, an insult, a way to remind them of their place. Now he knows. It was a weapon. His father nearly killed a child to strike at Muggleborns and blood traitors, to strike at Ron, who snores in the next bed, at Ginny, who blushes and glares, at Hermione, who argues with him over homework until they both forget they are supposed to be enemies. Lucius follows Dumbledore's gaze up the stairs, sees the red and gold, sees his son's face. For a heartbeat, the mask holds. Then it cracks. Not in fear of exposure, Draco realizes with a jolt, but in fury that this conversation is happening where he cannot control it. In front of the headmaster, in front of Potter, with Draco looking like this, wearing the wrong colours, sitting among the wrong people. "Run along to your tower, Draco," Lucius says, voice silken, eyes like knives. "This does not concern you." Dumbledore's answer is almost gentle. He remarks that such choices always concern our children, that it takes great courage to walk a different path than the one laid out by our parents. He does not look away from Lucius when he says it, but Draco feels the words land on him like a weight, like a key. He looks at Harry. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. Harry knows. Not everything, but enough. Lucius turns on his heel and stalks toward the doors. Draco rises and follows, because that is what he has always done, footsteps echoing in the vaulted space. Outside, the rain is colder. "You hesitate now," Lucius hisses, not bothering with charm. "Gryffindor is making you weak. The Dark Lord will not forgive weakness forever." Draco's throat works. He thinks of the diary, of ink and blood on stone, of Ginny's white face. He thinks of a monster bound into a book and a father who used it like a letter opener. What if weakness is not the most dangerous thing he carries? He opens his mouth to answer, and something else steps into their path. Cold, wet, a breath that is not a breath sliding over his skin. The thing in the train doorway towers, hood bent, skeletal hands clutching metal. The lights dim. The carriage seems to shrink around them. Harry sways, eyes rolling back. Hermione's hand is already on his arm. Ron shouts his name. Draco does not faint. He wants to. The world narrows to that rattling inhale, to the way the air thickens with despair, to a memory he never lived but has heard described in low, fervent voices around a polished table. A hooded figure, a dark lord, a promise that the Dementors were only the beginning. He has been planning this life since childhood, he realizes with a sick twist, planning to stand where those men stood. And now his knees are shaking. He grips the seat so hard his knuckles blanch. He looks at Hermione. She looks at him. Her lips are moving around a spell she does not quite know yet. The thing leans closer. Ice crawls up his spine. He hears his father's voice somewhere very far away, saying that fear is a tool, that Malfoys command it, never bow to it. His body does not believe him. When Lupin's Patronus bursts into the carriage, silver and blazing, Draco flinches like he has been struck. The Dementor recoils, glides away. Warmth returns in slow, reluctant waves. Harry is on the floor, gasping. Lupin bends over him, kind and efficient. Draco watches the professor's hand, steady on Harry's shoulder, and cannot quite make his own fingers unclench. Later, on the lawn, Buckbeak's feathers shine in the autumn light. Hagrid's voice is proud, hopeful. Gryffindors crowd forward, laughing, nudging one another toward the hippogriff. No Slytherin buffer now. No Crabbe and Goyle to echo his bravado. Just red and gold eyes on him when he steps up, when he bows with a flourish that is more performance than respect. The talon rakes his arm. Pain flares, bright and real. He goes down hard. For a heartbeat, he expects the usual rush. Housemates closing ranks, outrage on his behalf. It does not come. Someone mutters that he was showing off. Someone else says quietly that Hagrid explained the rules and Draco ignored them. Gryffindor does not protect him from his own choices. At night, the whispers about Sirius Black coil through the common room. Ron turns danger into stories. Harry turns it into a tightness around his eyes. Draco turns it into weapons, words sharpened and thrown like knives. If Black is after Harry, if the castle is not safe, then why is Harry so calm? Why does no one understand that men like Black remember bloodlines, allegiances, old meetings in dark rooms? He jabs at Harry about being a target, about dark wizards always finding him. He does not say that he wakes thinking of Azkaban, of Dementors recognizing a Malfoy name the way a Gringotts goblin recognizes an old account. He does not say that for the first time he is not sure whether his family history is a shield or a beacon. Lupin's private lessons begin. Harry walks to the empty classroom with that stubborn set to his shoulders. Draco lingers in the corridor once, twice, 3 times. He listens to the muffled instructions, to the word Patronus repeated like a promise. A spell to drive back Dementors. A spell to protect others, not just oneself. What would his memory be? Not the manner. Not his father's praise, always conditional. Perhaps a Quidditch dive, wind roaring in his ears. Perhaps the moment the hat said Gryffindor, and something in him broke and mended at once. He almost steps through the door, almost asks Lupin how to make the cold go away. Lupin looks up suddenly, as if he can feel him there. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. Draco's throat tightens. He imagines explaining that the Dementors terrify him more than Lucius ever has. The words will not come. Pride is an old, tight cloak. He pulls it closer, turns on his heel and walks away. The next time the train passes through fog, he does not sleep. The shack is breathing. Wood groans, dust shivers in the air. The wind claws at broken window panes. Somewhere far above, the whomping willow thrashes, its roots a tunnel of shadows. Draco Malfoy is not supposed to be here. 10 minutes earlier. The common room is half asleep, fire low, parchment scattered. Harry, Ron, and Hermione move like a single thought. Cloak, map, wands. Draco watches from the shadow of the stairwell, heart ticking faster with each glance they trade. He has been planning this in a vague, restless way for weeks, collecting every rumor about Sirius Black, every whispered warning about Harry being targeted again. They slip out through the portrait hole. He follows. He walks 2 landings behind, then 1, then risks the last corner close enough to hear fragments. Shack. Willow. Passage. It sounds like code. It sounds like they know something he does not, and that is intolerable. He thinks of Lucius's letters, careful and cold, full of ministry gossip and veiled hints about Black the mad traitor. He thinks of Dumbledore's quiet insistence that Black wants Harry dead. Both cannot be completely true. Can they? The willow is a black silhouette against the moon, lashing at empty air. Harry vanishes beneath a root. Ron is dragged. Hermione dives after. Draco hesitates only a heartbeat, then sprints, copying the way Harry pressed the knot in the trunk. The tree freezes. The earth opens. The tunnel is damp, close, smelling of roots and old fear. He crawls, robes snagging, knees bruising, breath harsh in his own ears. When he emerges into the shrieking shack, his wand is already in his hand. Chaos. Harry has Sirius Black at wand point. Ron is pale on the bed. Hermione stands between them and a thin, rat-like man Draco recognizes only from ministry photographs. Peter Pettigrew. Not dead. Not a martyr. Whimpering. Then Snape bursts in, robes billowing, eyes wild. For a second, he looks like every story Lucius ever told about him. Dangerous, useful, controlled. Then he sees Draco. Something cracks in his expression. Malfoy, Snape says, and the word is not a house name, not a threat, but a warning. He flicks his wand, trying to bind Sirius to end this before anyone can speak. But Harry shouts, Hermione argues, and Draco, Gryffindor colours bright against the gloom, refuses to move. Professor, he says, voice shaking but clear. If Pettigrew is alive, then Black didn't betray them. The Dark Lord killed the Potters because someone told him where they were. If that someone is this man, I need to know. Snape's jaw tightens. His cover is not just spy and Death Eater and double agent now. It is mentor, too, in front of a Malfoy heir who wears a lion. The story spills out in pieces. Lupin's hoarse confession about the marauders. Sirius's raw, broken fury as he describes Azkaban. Pettigrew's shrill denials collapsing into sobs. Names Draco has heard at elegant dinner tables become boys in stolen robes, hexing each other in corridors, swapping secret keepers like a joke that turned fatal. He looks at Harry. He looks at Hermione. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is bigger than house points, bigger than childish insults on a train. Snape tries to keep his voice detached as he speaks of James Potter, of humiliation, of old curses and older grudges. Draco watches the mask slip, sees not the calm, cruel professor, but a boy who once bled on this very floor because of a prank. House lines blur. Gryffindor, Slytherin, just banners over very human wounds. When they leave the shack, under the weight of promises, under the looming shape of the full moon, Draco walks last. The night feels thinner, the world less certain. Lucius's version of the war is no longer the only story. It might not even be the true one. He has more questions than answers, and for the first time, he is not sure which side his family is on, or which side he will choose. The sky splits with carriage wheels and ship masts. October. The lake is black glass when the Beaubaton carriage descends, vast and pale and glittering, like a visiting palace deciding to land on a field. Draco stands with the Gryffindors, collar up against the wind, watching the powder blue horses snort steam. He notes the cut of the French students' robes, the easy arrogance of old money worn like perfume. He cannot help the commentary that rises. Their etiquette is precise, but their banner work is ostentatious. Beaubaton always did mistake spectacle for substance. He knows this because Lucius said it once over brandy, talking about votes and trade concessions, about how Madame Maxime courts the French ministry. Draco had been listening from the doorway, memorizing every word. He has been planning this kind of observation his whole life, cataloguing which school aligns with which block, which name opens which door. Then Durmstrang erupts from the lake, all dark wood and iron. The students march with heavy staffs. Crumb walks among them, shoulders hunched, famous face set in a scowl that looks more like exhaustion than menace. Draco feels a sharp, almost painful admiration. Here is a seeker who turned his name into a currency the whole world recognizes. He murmurs something dry about Durmstrang's curriculum being 90% curses and 10% fur cloaks. The Gryffindors laugh, but he is watching Karkaroff's eyes, the way they flick toward Dumbledore, calculating. International politics, right here on the damp grass. If the Dark Lord rises, these are the schools whose alumni will choose a side. Where do the Malfoys sit when the map is redrawn? The goblet burns blue and ordinary names come and go. Then it turns red again, Harry Potter. The hall fractures into noise. Draco's first reaction is pure, acid jealousy. Of course. Of course the castle itself cannot go 1 year without throwing Potter onto a pedestal. But as Harry walks, stiff and pale, toward the antechamber, another thought coils in Draco's chest. This is old magic. Binding magic. Being singled out by it is not glory. 'Tis a sentence. He looks at Hermione across the table. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. They both know what contracts can do. They have read enough about oaths that kill. In another world, he would have led the Potter Stinks badges, made the corridors into a campaign. Here, he sleeps under the same lion banner. Open sabotage would drag Gryffindor points into the mud, invite questions about why a Malfoy is so eager to tear down his own housemate. He settles for barbed comments, for an elegantly raised eyebrow when Ron fumes. It is less satisfying than a full-scale war. It is also safer. Rita Skeeter notices him anyway. She corners him after transfiguration, quill twitching, eyes bright behind jeweled glasses. A Malfoy in Gryffindor, she purrs. What a symbol of Dumbledore's grand social experiment. What a rebuke to certain conservative elements in the ministry. Her words feel like a Gringotts contract written in gossip and ink. Draco answers carefully, every sentence a step along a cliff edge. If the prophet decides he is a reformed golden boy, his father is exposed. If they paint him as a traitor, Dumbledore gains a weapon. He has been planning this conversation since he first saw her byline, but reality is sharper than any rehearsal. The first task arrives cold and bright. From the stands, the arena looks too small for dragons. When Harry steps out, tiny, against the horntail, Draco's heart slams once, hard. If Potter dies, the fragile balance around his scar shatters. The Dark Lord will not wait for tournaments and school years. Smoke curls upward. Harry flies. The crowd roars. Draco grips the railing until his knuckles ache and understands, with sudden clarity, that if the boy on the broom falls today, the choice he has been postponing may come roaring out of the sky much sooner than he is ready. And somewhere below, in the shadow of dragon wings, plans older than any school banner begin to move. Music and candlelight, silk and shadows. For one night, Hogwarts looks less like a school and more like a court. December, the Yule Ball. Draco stands in front of the long mirror in the Gryffindor dormitory, fastening silver cufflinks to scarlet robes that still feel like borrowed skin. He has been planning this evening as a quiet reclamation. Glide down the staircase with a proper pure-blood girl on his arm. Show the school that a Malfoy in red is still a Malfoy. He tried. Pansy first, then Daphne, then a cool, amused Tracy. The conversations blur together in his memory. The raised brows, the way their eyes flick to his tie, to the lion crest, to the boys he walks with now. One by one, they decline, not rudely, politely, firmly. Father says it would look confusing. My aunt would not approve. You chose your house, Draco. That last one stings because it is almost true, so he changes the plan, or pretends he does. In the common room, Parvati and Lavender are laughing over dress robes and predictions about who Victor Crumb will ask. Draco walks over before he can talk himself out of it, every instinct screaming that this is beneath the Malfoy name and exactly what a Gryffindor would do. Parvati, he says, voice very even, would you allow me the honor of taking you to the ball? There is a beat of silence. Then Lavender's eyes widen, Parvati's mouth curves, and the two girls exchange a look that contains a small universe of gossip. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is a test. For both sides. All right, Malfoy, Parvati says, but if your dancing is as stiff as your posture, I reserve the right to abandon you for someone more graceful. The room laughs, not cruelly. The tension loosens by a fraction. Gryffindor, it seems, will let him try. Later, in the transformed Great Hall, he almost forgets to breathe. Hermione walks in on Crumb's arm, blue dress robes catching the light, hair tamed into elegant curls, moving with a self-possession that would not look out of place at any old family gathering his parents ever hosted. The world tilts. He has seen pure-blood ladies trained from childhood to command a room with a glance, a gesture, a perfectly measured laugh. Hermione does it without any of that, and every delegation in the hall responds as if it is the most natural thing. A Beauxbatons boy bows over her hand. A Durmstrang witch compliments her runes. Professors watch her with open respect. For a moment, Draco is not watching a muggle-born girl he once called names. He is watching a political fact, more than any description could contain. On the balcony, cold air and snow-dusted stone. Hermione finds him there, fingers wrapped around the railing, looking down at the dancers. You saw it, she says quietly. No preamble. You saw how they treated me. Not as a mistake, not as an exception, as an equal. International guests, he answers, because habit is a stubborn thing. Different standards. No, she says, stepping closer. Same standards, different excuses. You know what blood inheritance means to them, to your parents. You know what it doesn't mean to me. and tonight you saw that it doesn't have to mean everything. He looks at her, at the frost catching in her hair, at the anger and hope woven together in her eyes. They look at each other. The argument between them is old now, worn by repetition, but something shifts under it, subtle as ice cracking on a lake. "If they can bow to a girl like me," she asks, "what exactly are you defending when you defend blood?" He has no ready answer. The music swells behind them. Below, Crumb spins her across the floor and she laughs, utterly unafraid of the watching world. Draco's gaze drifts to the edge of the hall, to a darker corner where romance does not reach. Karkaroff and Snape stand half in shadow, heads bent, voices low. Karkaroff's hand twists in his sleeve, revealing a glimpse of something burned and blackened. Snape's face is carved from stone. The realization settles, heavy and cold. The real dances tonight are not on the polished floor, but in the quiet corners, in the whispers between men with old marks and older loyalties. And as snow presses against the enchanted windows, Draco understands that this glittering night is only a pause between movements in a far more dangerous waltz. The world tilts in a single scream. The stands are chaos, students pouring toward the maze entrance, teachers running, red sparks still fading above the hedges. Draco stands halfway down the Gryffindor section, one hand on the railing, knuckles white. He does not remember moving there. He only remembers the cold in his stomach when Harry and Cedric vanished. Then Harry is back, on the grass, curled around a cup that is no longer a trophy but an accusation. Cedric's body beside him, still and wrong in a way Draco has no words for. He watches Dumbledore sprint, actually sprint, robes flying. Hears Harry's voice break on one word. Voldemort. Not you know who. Not a whisper. A name hurled into the night like a curse. He has been planning this, Draco thinks. And he does not mean Harry. He means the man whose name tastes like iron in the air. The one his father speaks of in careful, distant phrases, as if the walls might listen. The hospital wing is sealed, but Gryffindors have always been good at finding cracks in walls and rules. Draco walks the corridor slowly, listening. Behind the heavy doors, there are murmurs, then raised voices, then the low, steady cadence of Dumbledore asking questions that sound like confessions. Later, when most students are herded to their dormitories, he doubles back. The castle is quieter now, the kind of quiet that comes after something has broken. He slips into a shadowed alcove near the hospital wing and waits. He has been planning this since the moment he saw Harry's face. Snape comes first, robes whispering. McGonagall with him, lips a thin line. They disappear inside. The door does not quite close. Draco hears fragments. Graveyard. Returned. Death Eater. A pause. Snape's voice, softer. Lucius. Dumbledore, answering with something that is not quite surprise, not quite regret, more than any description could contain. He cannot catch everything. He catches enough. The Dark Lord is not a rumour, not a cautionary tale told over tea. He is a man with a body again, with a wand, with a circle of followers, a circle that should, by all rights, have a place waiting for Draco Malfoy. Part of him straightens at the thought. This is what he was raised for. The family will be important. His father will be important. He imagines standing beside Lucius in a darkened room, silver mask cool against his skin. Another part of him looks up the corridor, toward the stairs that lead to Gryffindor Tower, to the common room where Ron is probably pacing and swearing under his breath, where Hermione is doubtless building explanations out of fear and logic, where Harry will eventually sit in an armchair and pretend he is not shaking. He looks at her. She looks at him. Not in reality, but in his memory of the Yule Ball, of Hermione in blue robes arguing with him about house loyalty and choice. A moment of understanding passes between them, stretched across time. You can choose different, her expression had said. He had laughed it off. In the hospital wing, through the narrow crack, he finally sees Harry. Face pale, eyes open, staring at nothing. There is a bandage on his arm, a shadow under his skin where a hand had pressed his flesh and claimed it. Draco knows, without needing to see the mark, that this war will not be abstract. He stands there a long time, watching the boy who shouted Voldemort's name into the night and came back with a corpse. Harry looks older, smaller, both at once. Back in the tower, an owl waits on his pillow. Pale, elegant, Malfoy seal on the wax. The letter is short. Lucius writes of disturbing developments, of the Dark Lord's designs, of how the family will be called upon soon. One line glows like a curse. Your unusual placement may prove an asset or a liability. Draco folds the parchment carefully. He knows what that means. Gryffindor is no longer just a house. It is a choice the Dark Lord might not forgive. The classroom smells of sugar and poison, pink lace, kitten plates, a smile like a painted crack. Professor Umbridge clears her throat, and the sound goes through the room like a curse. September, 5th year. Educational decree. Number 22 has barely dried. Draco Malfoy sits in the front row, back straight, crest bright against Gryffindor red. He has been planning this since the first whisper of a ministry appointment, rehearsing the tilt of his chin, the measured use of his surname, the way Lucius taught him to walk into a room and own it. He waits until after class, lets the other Gryffindors file out in a rustle of parchment, a muttered outrage. Then he steps forward. Umbridge looks up, eyes beady, smile fixed. "Professor, my father sends his regards." He lays down the folded letter with the Malfoy seal, every movement controlled. "He thought you might appreciate a friendly contact in Gryffindor." She studies the seal, then his tie, then his face. The smile does not reach her eyes. "How interesting, Mr. Malfoy," she says. A Gryffindor Malfoy. One hardly knows what to make of such inconsistency. He feels the word like a slap. Inconsistency. Not asset, not ally. A liability in two directions at once. She asks careful questions about Dumbledore, about Harry, about the tower. Her quill scratches, but her gaze never softens. By the time he leaves, he knows. She does not trust him. Not his house, not his blood. She wants information, not him. That night, the argument starts in a corner of the common room. Low voices, high stakes. Hermione has parchment spread in front of her, a list of names. Harry looks tired, older than 15, but steady. "We should invite him," Hermione says. "He knows how his parents think, how the ministry thinks. Tactical advantage." Ron's jaw tightens. "He grew up at that table, Hermione. You want to hand him a list of everyone willing to defy Umbridge?" Harry watches the fire. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. They both know what it is to be judged by a name. "Let him choose," Harry says quietly. "But on our terms. When the call comes, a whispered password, a note that looks like homework. Draco goes. The room of requirement blooms around him, stone and warmth and hidden power. He stands in the back, hood up, listening, as Harry explains defensive formations, as Hermione refines a shield charm until even the timid Hufflepuffs are holding their ground. Then Patronuses. Harry's stag bursts from his wand, silver and sure, lighting the room with something that is not just magic, but memory. Draco watches the way the others glow in that light, as if they have stepped into another world where fear has rules, and those rules can be broken. This, he thinks, is power. The Dark Lord cannot measure on a scale of curses, joy, loyalty freely given. It unsettles him. Outside, Umbridge tightens her grip. Decrees multiply. Draco walks a narrow line, offering her just enough. A time Harry was seen in the library, a rumor about secret meetings that never quite leads anywhere. In the tower, he forgets to deliver one of her messages, misdirects a patrol, leaves a door ajar, sabotage wrapped in pure blood politeness. At the next DA session, Harry insists he try. Expecto Patronum. Draco thinks of the manner, of Lucius's letter, of a childhood trained for a war he no longer understands. Silver mist spills from his wand, thin and shapeless, fading before it can take form. The room is silent. Hermione's otter circles once, curious, then vanishes. Ron looks away. Harry just nods. Again, he says. Draco lifts his wand, throat tight. The door of the room shivers as if something outside is listening. The corridor is too quiet. The room's door still shivers behind them, as if the castle itself is holding its breath. June, 5th year. The visions have started again. Harry walks fast toward the common room, jaw set, eyes distant. Draco keeps pace, shoulder to shoulder, every sense humming. He has been planning this conversation for weeks, cataloguing every nightmare Harry has mentioned, every odd pattern around the ministry, every time Umbridge's eyes flick to the fireplace as if waiting for a signal. Harry, Draco says, low. This is staged. He wants you to see it. He has been planning this since Christmas. The snake, your scar, the corridor. It's a lure. Harry doesn't slow. Sirius is there. I saw him. Hermione appears at the top of the stairs, hair escaping its tie, worry written in every line of her face. She looks at Harry. She looks at Draco. A moment of understanding passes between them, old and tired for people their age. What if it's a trap? She asks. What if it's not? Harry fires back. They argue in circles, logic against terror, patterns against love. Draco lays it out anyway. How Voldemort would use the Department of Mysteries. How the Ministry's obsession with secrecy makes it the perfect stage. How the prophecy Harry barely remembers could be the real prize. He talks about his father's letters, the way Lucius wrote of upcoming opportunities in carefully vague phrases. He knows this world. He knows what it looks like when Death Eaters circle something important. Harry listens. Then he goes anyway. The pattern interrupt is simple. Draco should stay. A Malfoy at the Ministry, on the wrong side, is a death sentence. Instead, standing in the echoing entrance hall as the DA gathers around Harry, he makes a different choice. If he gets that prophecy, Draco says quietly, I'm not a question mark anymore. I'm property. Neville looks at him, surprised. Luna only nods, dreamy and precise. They walk together to the Thestrals, the night air sharp, the world below London waiting. The Department of Mysteries is colder than Draco imagined. Shelves of glass spheres, whispering light, more than any description could contain. When the Death Eaters arrive, they are masks and black and familiar stances. Dual forms he has seen in his own drawing room. A masked figure advances on him, wand raised. The voice is smooth, amused. Little lion, little traitor. Draco knows that drawl. Not his father. The other one, an uncle by courtesy, a man who used to slip him chocolate frogs and tell him stories about the First War while his mother pretended not to listen. Step aside, Draco. Your father can still fix this. His hand shakes. Then he thinks of Harry's scar splitting open in the room of requirement, of Hermione's letter-perfect arguments about choice, of Gryffindor's table making room for him that first bewildering night. He fires a hex that sends the man crashing into a shelf. Prophecies raining down like glass rain. Something breaks in the sound. Childhood, maybe. Later, on the archway platform, the world narrows. Sirius laughing as he duels, reckless and brilliant. Bellatrix's curse. The slow, impossible fall through the veil. Harry's scream. Draco watches and understands, with a clarity that hurts, that this war will eat Black and Malfoy alike, that noble pure-blood names are only softer kindling. When it is over, the atrium is a ruin of broken tiles and smoking statues. Draco sits against a cracked pillar, robes torn, lip bleeding, wand still in his hand, because he does not quite trust the shaking to stop. Harry stands a few feet away, speaking to Dumbledore, voice raw. Hermione hovers near the others, counting injuries, counting breaths. Draco looks at her. She looks at him. No one says it aloud, but they all know there is no going back now. Not to the manor, not to being Lucius Malfoy's obedient heir. The next move will belong to the adults. For the first time, Draco understands they might not be the safest ones to decide it. The house is quiet and full of listening. Summer again. Malfoy Manor. This time, not Grimmauld, not the Burrow, not the safe, shabby rooms where Gryffindors argue over homework and Quidditch schedules. Draco stands in the drawing room with his parents and a line of masked figures, and he knows before the Dark Lord speaks that this is not a summons. It is a weighing. He is more visible now. Scarlet and gold have made him a banner, not a shadow. The boy who betrayed Slytherin expectations, who walks under the lion, who still carries the Malfoy name. He has been planning this reckoning since the moment the hat shouted Gryffindor. Voldemort's red eyes move over him with clinical interest, like a curse being measured. A Gryffindor Malfoy is useful if he can be broken, disposable if he cannot. The task is given. A school, a headmaster, a murder dressed as a mission of honor. Draco's stomach turns, but he bows, hears his own voice accept. His father's failure has to be paid for by someone. In this world, the son sorted to the enemy's house is the obvious coin. Later, Narcissa's composure shatters in a smaller room. Her fingers clutch at Severus's sleeve. Her voice breaks on the word kill. The unbreakable vow binds itself around them, pale light on pale hands. Snape looks at Draco once, searching his face the way Iron Scale once looked at Harry and Hermione in Gringotts, weighing more than any description could contain. What Draco does not know is that far away, Dumbledore is already adjusting the board. He has been planning this too. A Gryffindor Malfoy has been his quiet project for years now. Extra conversations after prefect meetings, carefully chosen detentions that turned into ethics debates, a letter or two sent home praising courage instead of cunning. Not enough to save yet, enough to make the fall hurt. When Draco returns to Hogwarts, Gryffindor Tower looks different. The portrait hole, the squashy armchairs, the fire that used to mean relief after a long day of pretending. Now they feel like wards he has been ordered to crack. A sanctuary he must map for invasion. He walks through the common room, cataloguing weaknesses, windows, routines. Which first years sleep closest to the stairs? Then someone laughs at a chess blunder. Someone throws a cushion, and the betrayal lodges in his throat. He spends his nights in the room of requirement with the vanishing cabinet, hands raw, mind racing. In another life, Slytherins would have fallen in line at a Malfoy's whispered request. Here, the Lions do not. When he tries to recruit, the Weasley twins' legacy lingers. Gryffindors question everything. Why do you need that passage? Why that classroom? Why are you always gone after curfew? His surname no longer opens doors. It closes them. Harry notices first. The way Draco's hands shake in potions. The way he looks thinner every week, as if the castle itself is draining him. Hermione starts keeping quiet tallies in the margins of her notes. Missed meals, unexplained absences, hexes that look like practice rather than pranks. They look at each other over the library table, and a moment of understanding passes between them. Something is wrong with Draco Malfoy. Not the old wrong of insults and rivalry, a new hollow wrong, like a bridge under too much weight. The question is not whether he is plotting something. It is whether anyone will reach him before the task reaches its end. The bathroom is quiet and echoing and wrong. White tiles, dripping tap. A boy in scarlet and gold, gripping a porcelain sink, as if it is the only solid thing left in the world. Draco's shoulders shake. He has been planning this breakdown for weeks without meaning to, holding himself together through classes and Quidditch and late-night patrols, until the weight of it all finally demands somewhere private to crack. Here. Now. Harry walks in 3 breaths later. He has been planning this confrontation too, in his own clumsy way, watching Draco's missed meals, his sudden silences in the Gryffindor common room, the way his hands tremble when an owl from home arrives. He follows the sound of retching and choked breaths, half expecting another argument, half fearing something worse. Draco does not hear the door. He looks at his own reflection instead, pale, hollow, eyes rimmed red, a Gryffindor tie hanging crooked, a Malfoy signet ring glinting like a shackle. I don't want to do it, he whispers to the empty room. I don't want to kill him. The words fall like a spell. Harry stops walking. Draco presses his forehead to the mirror. They'll kill Mother. They'll kill Father. They'll kill me. I don't know how to be both. I don't know how to be a Malfoy and a Gryffindor and still breathe. His voice rises, breaks. Dumbledore looks at me like he knows everything, like this is some lesson. And the Dark Lord, he cannot say, Voldemort. Not yet. He sent me a letter, like it was a prize. A moment of understanding passes between them that Draco does not even know he is offered. Harry hears not the arrogant boy from the train, but the boy who shared a dorm, who muttered strategy over Quidditch diagrams, who once dragged Ron out of the way of a cursed bludger without thinking. Draco, Harry says. Draco whirls, wand already in his hand, panic flaring into something sharp. How long? Harry sees the wand, the wild eyes, the cornered animal fear, and all the weeks of suspicion and half-glimpsed meetings and cursed necklaces snap into a single terrible line. He doesn't think. He reaches for the spell he found in the prince's book, the one that looked like power without context. Sectum sempra. The sound is wet and immediate. Draco is thrown back, red blooming across his chest and face in lines too precise to be natural. For one frozen heartbeat, the world holds its breath. Then Harry sees what he has done. To a boy who was crying, to a housemate whose bed is 3 over, whose snores he knows, whose complaints about homework have become part of the background noise of his life. Draco, no, no. Harry drops his wand, catches him as he falls, hands sliding uselessly over blood. More than any description could contain, pours out between his fingers. Snape arrives like a summoned storm, black robes snapping, eyes taking in wand, wounds, Harry's blood-slick hands in a single sweeping look. He does not ask what spell. He knows. Move! He snaps, and Harry stumbles back. Snape's wand work is precise, desperate, old. The gash is knit. The blood reverses its path. Draco's breathing hitches and then steadies, shallow but present. Fools! Snape hisses, voice low and shaking. Both of you, playing at curses you do not understand, playing at wars you are not ready to fight. His words lash Harry, but his eyes linger on Draco, on the Gryffindor tie, on the Malfoy ring, on the boy he has been ordered to protect and perhaps deliver to slaughter. For a second, Harry thinks he sees something like regret there. Later, the hospital wing is dim. Draco lies in a white bed, Gryffindor scarf folded on the chair, bandages peeking from under his gown. The scars are thin silver lines now, crossing his chest, his arms, his reflection when he dares to look. He traces one with a fingertip. This is what bravery looks like then. Blood on the tiles. A friend's wand turned enemy. No clean choices, only different kinds of damage. Is this what Gryffindor wanted from him? Footsteps approach down the corridor, more than one pair. Draco closes his eyes, not sure whether he is bracing for Harry, for Dumbledore, or for the next demand the war will carve into his skin. The night is thin and sharp around them. Wind claws at the stone. Draco stands in the broken mouth of the astronomy tower, wand levelled, knuckles white. Dumbledore leans against the parapet, breathing shallowly, robes torn where the curse has already done its work. The sky above is a churn of cloud and star, as if the whole magical world is holding its breath. His wand is shaking. He hates that. He has been planning this for months, listing steps the way Hermione drilled him for DA duels. Disarm, bind, signal. Only this plan ends with murder, with his mark earned in blood instead of ink on an essay. You're trembling, Mr. Malfoy, Dumbledore says softly, not from lack of skill. Draco swallows. The tower stones feel too close and too far all at once. You don't know anything about it. Oh, but I do, Dumbledore answers. I was there when the hat touched your head. His eyes, tired and bright, look not at the wand, but at Draco's face. It whispered Slytherin first. Cunning. Lineage. Your father's letters had reached me long before you walked through the doors. Draco flinches at the word letters, Lucius's looping script, warnings about Harry, about Granger, about the future Lord Potter and his dangerous ideas. Gringotts reports, Wizengamot whispers, more than any description could contain. But then Dumbledore continues. The hat tasted something else. The courage to defy, to stand up to your father, to the Dark Lord, if given the chance. The wind moans between the crenellations. Draco remembers a different hat, a different voice saying, "Are you sure? You could be great in Slytherin." He remembers saying, "No, Gryffindor." Saying it because Harry was there, because the war was already curling around their ankles, because he did not want to be his father's spy in his father's house. You put me there, Draco says hoarsely. You put yourself there, Dumbledore corrects, and then you trained with Potter, with Miss Granger, with my orders' children. I have watched you choose, year after year. The DA sessions flash behind his eyes. Harry shouting, "Again!" as Draco staggers up from a shield charm. Hermione's hand on his wrist, adjusting his grip. Neville, of all people, blocking one of his curses and grinning like he's just climbed a mountain. If I don't do this, he'll kill me, Draco whispers. Yes, Dumbledore says. No softness, only truth. He might. He has killed for less. The pattern breaks. Draco had expected pleading, manipulation, some grand speech about redemption. Instead, there is this terrible, simple acceptance. It lands heavier than any threat. So what will you be, Draco? Dumbledore asks. Executioner? Or something your father never planned for? The word executioner lodges like a splinter. He sees his mother's face at the manor window. He sees Harry in the room of requirement, offering him a place in the line, not behind it. He sees Hermione, ink on her fingers, drawing battle diagrams that always left room for someone to change sides. Slowly, deliberately, Draco lowers his wand. Not because he is weak, because he is choosing the more frightening path, to refuse the Dark Lord's command and accept whatever comes. Boots slam against stone behind him. The tower door bursts open. Death Eaters spill out like ink, masks gleaming, wands already up. Greyback's breath is a growl in the cold air. Draco does not move aside. He stands between them and Dumbledore, shoulders tight, wand still down, but body a barricade. A thin, pale line of Gryffindor red at his collar, half hidden by his cloak, suddenly louder than any banner. Move, boy, one of them snarls. He doesn't. For a heartbeat, they look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, but it is not friendly. It is the clear recognition that Draco Malfoy has just betrayed his blood. Then Snape arrives. His entrance is almost quiet. No shouted curse, no dramatic swirl, just the soft, deadly tread of someone who has been planning this since the unbreakable vow sealed around his wrist. He takes in the scene in a single, precise glance. Dumbledore cornered, Draco in front of him, Death Eaters ringed around. Severus, Dumbledore says. Snape's eyes flicker to Draco. For an instant, teacher and student stand in a strange mirror. Both double agents, both trapped in promises. Snape's gaze drops to Draco's lowered wand, then back up. Understanding again. Different this time. Sharper. Snape steps past Draco, placing himself at the true edge. His wand rises. Avada Kedavra. Green light. The world tilts. Dumbledore falls like a broken standard, the echo of the spell rolling out over the castle. Draco can't breathe. The Death Eaters surge, some reaching for him, some laughing, some already turning to flee. Come, one orders. A hand snatches at his cloak. Draco twists away. For years he has practiced dodging curses. Now he dodges his own side. He runs not toward the ramparts and the open night, but back into the castle's dark throat, down staircases, along forgotten corridors, into the shadowed spaces he mapped with Harry for escape routes and ambushes. He knows every turn. He has been planning this without admitting it to himself, every time he traced a path that led away from the dungeons and the manor both. Behind him, alarms begin to ring. Ahead, only darkness. In a single night, he's refused his father, refused his master, and refused the role carved out for him. Now the castle itself seems to hold its breath again, waiting to see what a Gryffindor Malfoy will do when there is no banner left to hide behind. The house is full of voices, too many, too loud, all wrong. Hours after the tower, Draco apparates to the lane below Malfoy Manor, with his heart hammering and his wand slick in his hand. He has been planning this sprint home in broken flashes all year, imagining the wards parting for him, his father's hand on his shoulder, the Dark Lord's cold approval. Instead, he sees shadows moving behind every window, masked figures on patrol, the faint, unmistakable glimmer of anti-apparition nets layered thick over the grounds. They are expecting triumph, or a body, not failure. He walks closer, careful, cloak hood up. A Death Eater at the gate looks straight through him, then past him, bored and irritated, muttering about the Malfoy boy who could not even manage a simple task. Another voice answers, low and vicious, speculating how long it will be before the Dark Lord decides a public example is needed. His name, his failure, spoken like a curse. Draco stops. The manor is right there. The door he has known since childhood. The hall where every Malfoy portrait hangs. It has never looked so far away. He turns instead. Narcissa meets him in a safe, anonymous sitting room in London, just off a narrow Muggle street that smells of rain and petrol. No portraits, no house elf, just a chipped teapot and a woman who looks like she has not slept in days. She presses a letter into his hand. The parchment is already creased from how many times she has folded and unfolded it. "You cannot be here," she says. "You cannot be there. So you will be elsewhere." He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. They both know what Lucius would say. They both know what the Dark Lord will do. The letter bears a phoenix seal. Not Dumbledore's hand, but Minerva McGonagall's, brisk and precise, offering an arrangement through mutual acquaintances at Gringotts and a neutral pure-blood line related distantly to the Prewets. For a week, Draco hides in that quiet, old-fashioned house with its lace curtains and its careful silences, watched by a grandmotherly witch who talks about gardening instead of politics. It is a pause in the war, fragile and unreal. Then Molly Weasley arrives. The burrow is chaos, warmth, noise. It is everything Malfoy Manor is not. Draco stands in the kitchen with his back too straight, surrounded by clanking pans, hand-knit tea cozies, a clock that measures danger instead of time. Ron will not look at him at first. Ginny does, eyes narrowed, like she is sizing up a bludger. Harry and Hermione arrive under order escort 2 days later, mud on their shoes, plans in their heads. The war has moved into kitchens and parlours now. They spread maps and ministry floor plans over the Weasleys' table, pushing aside plates and a jar of marmalade. Draco listens as they talk about Horcruxes, about Gringotts, about old magic and blood inheritance and what it will take to end this. He asks questions, sharp ones. Where will Voldemort fall back to? Which families will break first when the tide turns? He has been planning this in the quiet hours, remapping the Dark Lord's network from memory, tracing supply lines, safe houses, the web of fear that holds the world in place. Hermione watches him redraw a list of suspected Death Eater assets, his handwriting neat, his jaw tight. Harry watches too, remembering the boy on the tower who lowered his wand. They look at each other. More than any description could contain passes between them. Shared risk, shared guilt, the knowledge that if Draco had chosen differently, none of them would be here. Under Molly's reluctant protection, the ideology he grew up with begins to crack. He sees Arthur come home, exhausted from the ministry, still kind. He sees Molly cry over a casualty list that includes people Draco once heard his father dismiss as acceptable losses. He cannot unsee it. So when word comes that Snape has taken the headmaster's office and Hogwarts is changing hands, the decision is already forming. A school under Death Eater control is not just a symbol. It is a factory for the next war. McGonagall's next letter is simple. There will be students who need someone on the inside. someone the Carrows will underestimate because they think they know him. Draco folds the parchment, fingers steady. He will return to Hogwarts wearing scarlet and gold, walking back into a castle occupied by his supposed allies as something they do not have a name for yet. Not spy, not traitor. A Gryffindor Malfoy embedded behind enemy lines, ready to pull the structure down from within. And the first cracks will begin where no one is looking. In the common rooms, in the corridors, in the quiet moments between detentions and curfews, where fear thinks it rules, unchallenged. The corridors are wrong. Light feels thinner, stretched over stone that remembers other footsteps. The portraits whisper and pretend not to watch. Detention does not mean lines anymore. It means cruciatus in an empty classroom while the Carrows laugh. By autumn of 7th year, Hogwarts has become a training ground. Darker robes, stricter curfews, doors that used to open now sealed with curses. Slytherin is rewarded with late-night patrols and special privileges, handed authority like sweets. Gryffindor is a problem to be solved. Names are read out in the Great Hall. Points do not matter. Pain does. And in the middle of it, a Gryffindor Malfoy. Amicus Carrow looks at Draco the first week like he is a gift, a pure-blood heir marked by pedigree and expectation, wrapped in scarlet and gold as if the hat itself made a joke. He has been planning this, Draco thinks, watching the way Amicus parades him in front of the older Slytherins. A symbol, a warning. Even a Malfoy can learn his place. But Draco walks back to the lion table every night. He sits under the banner that used to feel like a dare and now feels like a shield. The first years look at him with wide eyes, half terrified, half hopeful. If a Malfoy can sit here and survive, maybe they can too. So he begins to work. He has been planning this in smaller ways for years, learning how detentions are written, how records are kept, how Filch files his parchment. Now he uses it. A missed curfew becomes a warning instead of a flogging when the name quietly disappears from the roll. A student marked for special discipline is suddenly recorded as too ill to attend. Draco's quill moves quickly. Neat strokes, familiar surname at the bottom. The Carrows see Malfoy and do not look closely at the rest. He stands in front of doors when he can, body a physical barrier between Amicus and a shaking second year. He argues in the language his father taught him: blood, loyalty, reputation. You do not damage assets. You do not waste pure stock. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it only buys a few seconds. In this world, a few seconds matter. Neville Longbottom, who once could not remember his own password, now leads the resistance. Secret meetings in the room of requirement. Hidden food, hidden wands, hidden plans. Draco and Neville trade glances in corridors, too careful for words. A nod, a folded bit of parchment slipped into a pocket. A schedule altered so that Gryffindor first years are never alone on Carrow nights. They look at each other across the common room once, after hauling a hexed third year up the stairs. A moment of understanding passes between them. Neville will organize the hiding places. Draco will rewrite the ledgers. Between them, a net stretches under children who do not even know it is there. Rumours start in Hufflepuff, as rumours often do, spread through Ravenclaw, refined into theory. By the time they circle back to Gryffindor, they have become something else. That Draco Malfoy forged his own detention slips, that he took the Cruciatus meant for a Muggle-born, that he walked straight into the Carrow's office with a list of names and came out with that list burned. Not all of it is true. Enough is. Even a Malfoy in Gryffindor, they whisper, is defying them. Draco hears it one night, half hidden behind a tapestry, listening to first year's talk like he is already a story, more than any description could contain. He feels the weight of it settle on his shoulders, heavier than any family ring, stranger than any Gringotts vault, because legends are noticed. And being noticed in this castle is the most dangerous thing he can be. The next order from the Carrows arrives at breakfast, carried by a black owl and sealed in green wax. It has his name on it, as... The house is too quiet for how many people it holds. Malfoy Manor breathes around them, walls listening, portraits leaning in. Draco stands in the drawing room under the chandelier, summoned home like a misdelivered letter. His mother's hand is light on his arm. His father will not meet his eyes. The air smells of smoke, fear, and something sharp from Bellatrix's wandwork in the next room. He has been planning this conversation with his parents since Christmas, rehearsing arguments about Hogwarts, about the Carrows, about what the Dark Lord is really doing to their world. None of that matters when the doors slam open and the snatchers shove 3 prisoners into the center of the carpet. Mud, blood, torn clothes, a curse burn on one freckled arm, a girl's hair matted with dirt, and a boy with a swollen face that cannot quite hide the lightning bolt scar Draco has seen too many times to count. Bellatrix looks almost joyful. Draco, she purrs, circling them. Come here, dear. We have guests. The snatchers think they've caught something valuable. Lucius steps forward, desperate, eyes too bright. If it is him, Bella, the Dark Lord will... His voice breaks on the promise he does not dare finish. Will forgive us. Will restore us. Will make this house safe again. Draco walks closer. Each step feels like crossing a ward line he will never recross. He looks at the boy's ruined face, at the 2 familiar green eyes under the swelling. He looks at her. She looks at him. Hermione's gaze is dark, steady, full of Gringotts vaults and DA meetings, and nights in the common room, arguing over tactics while the fire burned low. Ron shifts, chains clinking. His jaw is clenched, but Draco can see it. The memory of a Quidditch pitch, of shouted insults that turned into shouted warnings, of a Gryffindor dormitory where they learned to live around each other's tempers. Bellatrix's wand presses under Harry's chin. Is this Harry Potter? She asks softly. We must know before we call our master. Look closely, Draco. He does not need to look closely. He knows everything about that face, about the way Harry holds himself even when he is pretending not to be afraid, about the way danger seems to bend toward him, as if the whole magical world is a Gringotts ledger, and Harry is the line that never quite balances. A pattern interrupts his panic, a flash of a different drawing room, different light. Gryffindor red instead of Malfoy green. Harry shoving him behind cover in the room of requirement. Hermione's hand on his wrist, steadying his wand as they practice defensive chains. McGonagall's voice telling him, quietly, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. Harry's eyes say, "Don't." Draco's answer is already there, in the way his fingers shake. "What are you waiting for?" Lucius hisses. "Is it him?" Draco's throat is dry. If he says yes, his family might be restored. If he says yes, every late-night argument in the Gryffindor common room about right and wrong becomes a lie. If he says yes, he will have to live in a world where Hermione Granger's trust in him was a mistake. He hears his own voice, thin and strained. "I can't be sure." Silence, then chaos. Bellatrix shrieks, orders fly. The prisoners are dragged away for questioning, for torture, for something worse. The chandelier falls, spells crack the air, wild and bright. Dobby appears, impossibly, and everything breaks. When it is over, the prisoners are gone. The Dark Lord's fury is rising like a storm they can already feel. Malfoy Manor is scarred, walls blasted, tables shattered. The chandelier a ruin on the floor. Draco stands in the wreckage of his family's home, heart hammering. He knows exactly what he has done. In that single, stammered sentence, he chose Gryffindor loyalty over Malfoy survival. And the war will not forget. The castle is already screaming, stone shaking, windows shattering inward, green and red light slashing through the night. Hours after Malfoy Manor, Draco stands on the battlements of Hogwarts with his wand in a white-knuckled grip and smoke in his lungs, watching the Dark Lord's army close like a fist. He has been planning this in fragments, never daring to admit it even to himself. Every whispered warning to McGonagall, every coded letter to the Order through Hermione's careful hand, every time he walked the corridors and mapped which walls were thickest, which staircases would turn traitor. Now giants hammer the outer wards, spiders pour over the grass, and Death Eaters slip through the broken gaps like ink. Below him, the great hall becomes an armory. Tables shoved aside, armor stands opened, students fumbling with shields and belts. Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs knot around Professor Sprout, stuffing pockets with honking bulbs and vicious little plants. Ravenclaws argue about angles of fire from the upper galleries. Slytherins hover near the doors, some pale with fear, some with a sharp, assessing look Draco knows too well. He walks down into that chaos, scarlet and gold tie askew, Malfoy ring hidden under a dragonhide glove. Harry looks up from a map of the grounds, eyes ringed with exhaustion. He looks at her. She looks at him. Hermione gives the smallest nod. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is the night everything breaks. The first breach comes at the viaduct. Stone explodes. Death Eaters pour through the dust. Draco is there, faster than anyone expects, because he knows who will come. Dolohov, Yaxley, two others who used to stand in his father's study and talk about purges like weather. Spells cross in mid-air. Students scream and scatter. Dolohov's curse arcs toward a knot of Gryffindors and Slytherins both. Draco steps into its path, shield charm flaring, the impact slamming him back into a pillar hard enough to crack stone. "Malfoy!" Someone gasps. Draco straightens, lungs burning. "Pick a side," Dolohov sneers. "I just did," Draco says, and sends a chain of curses so fast the older man actually stumbles. It is public, undeniable, lit by a dozen wands. Gryffindors see it. Slytherins see it. The lie of neutrality burns away in the light of his own spellfire. After that, there is no going back. He fights beside Harry on the marble staircase, both of them shoulder to shoulder as grey-masked figures surge upward. Draco calls positions before they appear, shouting, "Left balcony, Travers favors high ground." And, shields up, they'll use piercing hexes on the banisters. Harry does not ask how he knows. He simply adjusts, trusts, moves with him. In the courtyard, Hermione and Ron anchor a defensive ring around a cluster of younger students. Draco drops into place without being told. Wand, already tracing complex arcs he learned in a different life, at a different table. He has been planning this too, how to turn Death Eater dueling forms inside out. how to answer dark curses with clean, brutal efficiency. A streak of sickly yellow light cuts toward a small boy in Slytherin green, frozen in terror. Second year. Muggle-born. Draco recognizes him from the library. He does not think. He dives. The curse slams into his hastily raised shield, shatters it, grazes his ribs like ice and fire together. He hits the flagstones hard, dragging the boy under him, cloak smoking. "Move when I tell you," Draco hisses, voice raw. You run for the hall. You don't look back. The boy nods, eyes huge. More than any description could contain passes through that look. Fear, confusion, the shattering of an old house myth. By the time the fighting surges inward, Draco is limping, blood soaking his sleeve, hair singed. He helps Ron drag a wounded Aura through the doors of the Great Hall, as the makeshift hospital fills with cots and the dead are laid in careful rows. Then the voice comes. Voldemort's words roll through the air and the stone and the bones of the castle, promising mercy if Harry Potter walks out to die. Silence falls like a spell. Faces turn. Hearts break in advance. Draco stands there in the center aisle, chest heaving, wand still raised out of habit. He knows, with a clarity that almost feels calm, that there is no path back to the Dark Lord. No way to claim he was only a spy, only afraid, only following orders. Whatever Harry chooses, whatever this night demands, Draco Malfoy has already chosen. The bridges are ash behind him, and the war will remember. The Great Hall is too bright, too loud, too full of the living. Draco stands in the aisle he just burned behind him, watching the chaos move around the longhouse tables, watching professors argue over wards and wounded, watching Weasleys clutch each other as if the world might tilt and spill them off the benches. And then he notices Harry. Not the chosen one, not the symbol, just a boy in a torn jumper, moving along the wall, quiet as smoke. No one looks. No one stops him. There is a stillness in Harry's shoulders that Draco recognizes with a jolt, because he has been planning this. Not this exact moment, maybe, but this kind of walk. The walk you take when you have already decided what you are going to die for. For 1 second, Draco does nothing. His hand is empty, his wand somewhere between his fingers and the floor. He watches Harry slip through the doors, into the dark corridor beyond, and the realization hits so hard it almost doubles him over. Harry is going to meet Voldemort alone. He lurches forward. Of course he does. He is a Gryffindor. His body moves before his mind can list the reasons this is madness. He makes it 3 steps before a hand catches his sleeve. McGonagall. Her face is grey with exhaustion, but her grip is iron. Mr. Malfoy. No. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. She knows where Harry is going. Draco knows she knows, and they both know that if he follows, he will only give Voldemort another hostage. So he stays. He waits. He stands in a hall full of people and feels more alone than he ever did in the manor. Time stretches. He remembers first-year Quidditch, rain in his eyes, as Harry dove after the snitch like the ground was an afterthought. He remembers the troll, the stone, the chamber, the way they argued over everything, and still ended up back to back when it mattered. He remembers late-night strategy in the common room, parchment and chocolate frog wrappers, and whispered plans that changed the shape of the magical world. When the doors finally open again, the air itself seemed to flinch. Voldemort walks at the center of a knot of Death Eaters. Hagrid staggers behind, huge shoulders shaking. And in his arms, Harry, limp, glasses crooked, head hanging. Draco's mind goes perfectly blank. No clever thought, no plan, just the memory of 11-year-old Harry on the Hogwarts Express, asking about houses as if they were letters from a bank he had not opened yet, as if he did not know he already owned everything that mattered. He hears Voldemort's voice as if from underwater. He hears Narcissa's steps as she bends over Harry's body, hears the hitch in her breath that only a son would notice. "Is he alive?" the Dark Lord whispers. Draco watches his mother's face, watches her choose. "He is dead," she lies. But Draco hears the truth buried inside it. "Not my lord, not my husband's master, not the man who held our house in chains. She is protecting the boy her son brought home in stories and arguments and furious letters. The boy Gryffindor claimed years ago. The lie cracks the world. When Harry slips from Hagrid's arms and the battle explodes back into motion, Draco runs. Not away, into the castle, into dust and spellfire and screaming portraits. If Harry walked into the forest for this, Draco will not let it be in vain. Somewhere ahead, a green jet of light flashes down a corridor, and Draco skids to a halt, heart hammering, as he sees who it's aimed at. The spell hits Fred. For a heartbeat, the world is only noise, and falling stone, and the hollow crack of something that should not break. Then silence folds in on itself. Dust hangs in the air like fog. The great hall becomes a place between battles. Bodies on conjured stretchers, healers moving in tight, efficient lines, professors walking as if every step might be over a student they once marked homework for. Draco stands just inside the ruined doorway, not with the Gryffindors clustered around the Weasleys, not with the Slytherins gathered in a wary knot near the far wall. Apart. His robes are torn, one sleeve burned, Malfoy crest half scorched. He looks at the 4 house tables, at the rubble where the staff table used to be, at Harry's still body laid out under a white sheet that does not quite hide the mess. He has been planning this moment for years without knowing its shape. Every choice since the hat shouted Gryffindor, every whispered report to McGonagall, every letter he did not send home. Now that it is here, there is no plan. Only the weight of eyes, some grateful, some murderous. Days later, the great hall becomes a courtroom. The banners are back, but they look wrong against the black-draped walls. Kingsley stands where Dumbledore once sat, McGonagall to his right, jaw set. A line of chained chairs holds Death Eaters and collaborators. Lucius Malfoy sits there, wrists bound in enchanted iron. Draco does not. That in itself is the first argument. The Ministry debates him like a problem in ancient runes. On one side, the Malfoy name, the gold that flowed through Gringotts into Voldemort's war chest, the manor that held prisoners and secrets. On the other, a Gryffindor prefect who took Cruciatus from the Carrows rather than name younger students, who opened passages for Dumbledore's army, who walked into his own home as a spy. Public opinion fractures. The prophet runs headlines that know nothing and pretend to know everything. Some letters demand Azkaban for all Malfoys. Others ask, carefully, what the war was for, if not to make space for those who turned back. Testimony Day. Neville speaks first. He walks to the centre, still limping, still carrying his broken wand as if it anchors him. He describes the night on the astronomy tower, how Draco lowered his wand and stepped between Snape and a killing curse aimed at a terrified first year, How he dragged two stunned students out of the line of fire when no one was looking. Hermione follows. Her voice shakes only once when she talks about the manor. About a boy who misidentified them just enough to buy time, who slipped her a rusted nail in a moment the Carrows thought she was beyond noticing. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them that is more than any description could contain. Then Harry, alive, thin as a shadow, eyes too old. He tells them about the Room of Requirement, about Draco refusing to give up the younger Slytherins even when threatened, about a wand lowered in the forest when panic could have made him strike. When the Chief Warlock asks why he is defending a Malfoy, Harry answers simply, because he chose differently when it mattered. Pattern, interrupt. Kingsley does not ask for mercy. He asks what kind of world they are building. McGonagall backs him, voice like iron. If they punish every turn away from darkness the same as those who ran toward it, who will ever risk defecting? The verdict is not clean. Conditional amnesty. No public office for a decade. Mandatory work in reconstruction and war reparations. His Gringotts accounts audited, his vaults bled into funds for Muggle-born families and orphaned children. Draco walks out of the hall without chains, but not free. The Malfoy name will never again open doors the way it once did. Perhaps that is the point. Ahead of him lies a world that will remember everything and forgive selectively. Behind him, the echo of a hat's decision that cracked the world. And somewhere between those two, the space where a Gryffindor Malfoy has to decide what his courage is for now. The station is full of steam and old ghosts. September again. King's Cross. 19 years later. The barrier to platform 9 3/4 looks exactly the same, and nothing like it at all. Children run, owls complain in their cages, trunks rattle over the tiles. Above it all, the scarlet engine waits, patient as a heartbeat. Draco walks through the barrier a little slower than he once did. No entourage, no peacocking swagger. Simple, well-cut robes in charcoal grey, the fabric good but not loud. At his collar, almost hidden in the fold of the cloth, a faint Gryffindor pin catches the light for anyone who knows where to look. Red enamel, silver rim, red and silver instead of green. He has been planning this morning more carefully than any ministry speech. Tickets in his inner pocket. A folded letter from Astoria he refuses to reread here, where the air already smells like endings and beginnings. Beside him, a boy with pale hair and darker eyes tries not to stare at the train as if it might judge him first. Remember, Draco says quietly, the hat sees everything you are, not just what you think you should be. His son swallows, nods, fingers tightening on the handle of his trunk. But what if it puts me somewhere you don't like? The question is soft, almost lost under the whistle. Draco looks at the boy. For a moment he sees a smaller version of himself, furious at a world that would not bend. Then he shakes his head. Then it will be right, he answers. Because the courage to live with where you land matters more than the landing. House is a start, not a sentence. They walk toward the train. Ahead, another family is already there. Black hair, red hair, laughter. Harry turns first. He looks older, lines at the corners of his eyes. But the way he straightens when he sees Draco is the same from the war. Alert, measuring, open and guarded at once. He looks at her. She looks at him. Ginny's gaze flicks to the Gryffindor pin, then back to Draco's face. A brief, wry curve of her mouth. Malfoy, she says, inclining her head. Not cold, not warm. A temperature they have invented together over years of shared trials and separate lives. Potter. Weasley. Draco's nod is small, but it carries more than any description could contain. Battlefields, courtrooms, hospital corridors. The memory of standing back to back once, wand arms shaking, when the world was ending and house colours ran together in the smoke. A little way off, Hermione is finishing a rapid explanation about new Muggle-born outreach grants to a distracted Rose. When she turns, she nearly collides with Draco. There is a heartbeat where 19 years vanish, and a first-year girl hears mudblood again. Then it is gone. Draco, she says, and the use of his given name is its own quiet ceremony. Minister, he replies with the faintest edge of irony. A shared joke now, not a sneer. I read your latest proposal. Automatic Gringotts accounts for Muggle-born families. Direct ministry letters before Hogwarts, not after. Ambitious. Hermione's eyes light. The old fire still there. We're close. The Wizengamot grumbled, but the numbers are on our side. Children shouldn't have to stumble into the magical world blind, or walk into a bank and be treated like intruders. A radical thought, Draco murmurs, everyone knowing where they stand from the beginning. A moment of understanding passes between them. From slur to statute, from corridor insults to committee debates about blood inheritance laws and names that used to lock doors, the whistle blows. Children begin to climb aboard. Potter and Malfoy offspring mix on the platform, awkward and curious. One of Harry's boys says something that makes Draco's son snort, surprised into laughter. They look at each other, testing the shape of a possible friendship. On the train, compartment windows fill with faces. Hands press to glass. Wands wave. The engine heaves, then starts to move. As it pulls away, Malfoy and Potter children lean out as far as they dare, waving at the same shrinking cluster of adults. Red and silver, red and gold. No one checks which scarf belongs to which hand. The train rounds the bend and vanishes into smoke and sky, carrying a generation for whom house and blood are stories to choose from, not cages to inherit. Behind them, on the platform, the ones who rebuilt this world stand very still, listening to the echo of a whistle and the quiet, dangerous thought that courage might finally belong to everyone. The hall is loud and strangely quiet. 4 tables, one story being rewritten in real time. In this world, Draco Malfoy never crosses the dungeon threshold as a Slytherin heir. He walks to the Gryffindor table instead, pale and furious and pretending not to shake. That single walk becomes a fault line. The hat's shout forces everyone to look twice at the banners above their heads and ask whether red and gold, green and silver ever truly meant what they thought. Draco's presence in the lion's den peels back assumptions like old paint. First years watch a Malfoy pass pumpkin juice to a Muggle-born. Older students watch McGonagall deduct points from her own house for pure blood insults. The easy equation of Slytherin with evil, Gryffindor with virtue, begins to crack, not because of a speech, but because the boy who was supposed to be the enemy is doing homework at the same table as Harry Potter and Hermione Granger. It happens slowly. A Quidditch practice where Draco snarls at a Ravenclaw chaser, then apologizes badly because Wood threatens to bench him. A potions class where he and a Hufflepuff partner save a ruined draft of peace and Snape's mouth tightens before he grudgingly awards points. Each moment is small, but together they drag the houses toward each other, step by reluctant step. Friendships and rivalries shift their lines. The old Gryffindor-Slytherin Cold War never quite solidifies when the loudest Malfoy sneer is coming from the red side of the room. Inter-house study groups become less suspicious experiment and more quiet habit. A Slytherin beater and a Gryffindor chaser share strategy notes. A Ravenclaw prefect walks a nervous first-year Hufflepuff to the dungeons to visit a friend. Bravery and ambition start to look less like opposites and more like two edges of the same blade. In the Slytherin common room, the loss of the Malfoy heir is an insult and an opportunity. Some resent him bitterly, whispering about betrayal under the green glass light. Others feel the sudden space where his shadow would have stood and stepped forward. Without Draco as ready-made prince, quieter leaders rise. A half-blood who cares more about grades than bloodlines. A girl who questions why serving a Dark Lord is considered tradition. The house still coils around its secrets, but its path toward Death Eater recruitment is no longer quite so straight. Dumbledore sees it first. Later, McGonagall continues it. In opening feasts and end-of-year speeches, they begin to name Draco without naming him. A boy who chose differently. A reminder that the sorting hat is wise, but not infallible. He has been planning this, Dumbledore thinks, every time he nudges the story toward choice and away from prophecy. McGonagall stands in his place after the war, looks over a hall stitched together by shared detentions and shared battles, and says aloud that redemption is a house trait open to all. He looks at her. She looks at him. At the staff table, in one quiet year after Voldemort falls, they look at each other when a first year in green shakes hands with a first year in red. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is what the risk was for. Future students will grow up on two legends told side by side. The boy who lived and the Malfoy who wore scarlet and gold, who stood on the wrong side of every expectation and helped end a war. And somewhere, deep in the castle, an old hat mutters to itself, wondering what will happen the next time it dares to be wrong on purpose. 4 beds in a row, 4 trunks, 4 sets of curtains breathing in the dark. Some nights, Harry lies awake and listens to Draco's breathing on the other side of a thin strip of air and red hangings. Once, that space held a rival in his imagination, a faceless Slytherin threat. Now it holds a boy who snores when he is exhausted, who mutters Latin phrases from old Malfoy grimoires in his sleep. It does something to Harry's sense of self. Having his supposed opposite so close he can hear every restless turn. The world is no longer neat lines of lion versus serpent, good versus evil. It is a boy with a dark mark in his future brushing his teeth at the same sink, complaining about homework, asking in a low, tight voice what it felt like to face Voldemort and live. He has been planning this question for days. Harry can hear it in the way Draco circles the topic, then finally lets it fall between them like a stone. Harry looks at him. He looks at Harry. A moment of understanding passes between them. Environment is not an excuse, Harry thinks, but it is a map. If the Dursleys could twist a child one way, what did a manor full of curses and expectations do to the boy now sleeping under a lion banner? Hermione watches Draco like she would a complicated text, full of contradictions and marginal notes. At first, he is almost a research subject, proof that blood inheritance, house culture, and early intervention can change outcomes. She builds charts in her notebook, tracks his language, his posture, the way mudblood dies on his tongue after October and never quite returns. Then he fails one of her silent tests, a cruel comment a thoughtless sneer at Ron's hand-me-downs, the neat project fractures. Is he something to fix, or someone she must accept, edges and all? The question bothers her more than she admits. She walks the corridor outside the common room, counting her steps, knowing that true reform is not control but companionship, not turning Draco into a model Gryffindor, but standing near enough that he has another path to choose. Ron feels it in his bones. The first time Draco drops a casual remark about the Malfoy vaults at Gringotts, the old resentment flares hot. Silver cutlery, polished floors, a childhood of everything versus a childhood of almost enough. Now that wealth lives in his dorm, wears the same colors, sits at the same table stealing his toast, sharing space with a rich pureblood in his own house, forces Ron to look directly at the bitterness he usually hides under jokes. Their fights are loud, sharp, full of class and pride. But when a troll is in the bathroom or a basilisk is in the walls, Ron discovers something unnerving. Draco runs toward danger with them. His fear is real, his loyalty erratic, but his wand is out and his brain is already 3 moves ahead. Pattern interrupt. The night in 3rd year, when it is Draco who pulls Ron back from hexing Snape in the corridor, hissing that they cannot afford to lose points, that they need the man alive for reasons he cannot yet say. Cunning, suddenly, is on their side. Sometimes Draco's presence splits them, sends Hermione stalking off to the library alone, or Ron down to the pitch to hit bludgers until his hands ache. Sometimes it locks them into a tighter formation, especially when Slytherin eyes are watching, or when a Death Eater name echoes through the hall. They look at each other more often, measure, recalibrate. Harry's courage, Hermione's strategy, Ron's heart, Draco's calculation. 4 flawed lines crossing in the middle of a war. The Golden Chaos Quartet. Together, they become something more than any description could contain. A configuration of strengths and weaknesses that might be the only shape of victory this story will allow. The office is quiet and full of calculations. September 1991. Somewhere between the moving staircases and the weight of old stone, the adults begin to reposition their pieces around one unexpected lion. Dumbledore watches the first-year Gryffindor table with that distant, almost distracted look that means he is seeing 3 moves ahead. Draco between Harry and Ron, Hermione across from them, all red and gold. He has been planning this war for a long time, but this, the hat's shout of Gryffindor, for a Malfoy is a gift he did not dare assume. He adjusts quickly. A word to McGonagall about pairing Draco with Hermione in group work. A suggestion that Hagrid invite all 4 of them to tea. A quiet note to Madame Hooch about giving the Malfoy boy a fair tryout as Seeker. He does not shove, he nudges. Slightly different reading lists. A defense curriculum that leans hard on moral choice when he knows Draco will be listening, pretending not to care. A prefect, later, chosen not for grades, but for the way they look at Draco and do not flinch. If Hogwarts itself can become the counterweight to Malfoy Manor, why wouldn't he use every corridor, every late-night patrol, every detention as another chance to show a different world? In the dungeons, Snape reads the same sorting report and feels the ground tilt. Potter in Gryffindor, he expected. Draco Malfoy in Gryffindor, he did not. His first reaction is simple. Fury at the hat, at Dumbledore, at the loss of influence over a key Slytherin heir. Then the more complicated layer settles. He has sworn to protect Lily's son. He has been planning this protection for years. Now the boy he was meant to shepherd, Lucius's boy, sleeps under the same lion banner as James Potter's son. Every potion's lesson becomes a tightrope. He snaps at Harry, softens by instinct toward Draco, then catches himself. Old loyalties blur. If he favors Draco too openly, Slytherin will feel abandoned. If he is cruel, Narcissa will know. So he protects sideways. Extra safety wards on Gryffindor Slytherin duels. Detentions that pull Draco out of late-night corridors when he looks too much like a recruitment target. A warning once hissed under his breath. You are not as untouchable here as you think. Draco hears the care inside the insult. Far away, Narcissa writes. The first letter arrives on thick parchment, scented faintly of something floral and expensive. No outrage, no demand that he appeal the sorting. Only, my dragon, I trust you to adapt. Small gifts follow via school owl and discreet house elf. Warmer gloves, a better quill. A book on advanced shielding charms with certain passages underlined. Her coded lines are clear if you know how to read them. Survive first. Choose later. Her allegiance is not to the Dark Lord's cause. It is to the boy who signs his replies with shaky, newly Gryffindor handwriting. Lucius plays a different game. Publicly, he rages. He complains at the ministry, hints in the prophet that Hogwarts is failing pure-blood tradition. Privately, he realizes what proximity to Harry Potter might be worth. A son in Gryffindor can overhear Weasley gossip, Granger theories, Potter secrets. Letters home begin to ask careful questions. Who does Potter trust? What does Dumbledore tell you after hours? Lucius frames it as family duty, as cleverness. Draco feels the tug of approval like a hook, so one boy becomes a crossroads. For Dumbledore, a project in redemption and choice. For Snape, a living test of divided loyalties. For Narcissa, the axis of her quiet rebellion, survival over ideology. For Lucius, a potential instrument of control. All of those strategies, all of those fears, collide in a single Gryffindor dormitory, in the space between one bed and another, where Harry and Draco look at each other and do not yet know which adult's plan will break first. The war begins to bend in places no one can see yet, not with a curse, but with a school tie in the wrong colors. By the time Voldemort returns with a body in that graveyard, the damage is already there, quiet and structural. He has been planning this for years. A network of old names, old money, old grudges. The Malfoys are meant to be the glittering center of that web. A manor, a vault at Gringotts, a son in Slytherin. Proof that the pure-blood world still belongs to him. Instead, his followers have to watch Lucius Malfoy's heir sit beneath a scarlet banner. The boy who should have been a prince of the dungeons now walks out of the Gryffindor portrait hole with Harry Potter. The symbolism is corrosive. If the hat itself sends a Malfoy to the house of Dumbledore, of the Potters, of the Weasleys, then perhaps the old certainties are not certainties at all. Around drawing room tables and in private boxes at Quidditch matches, other families notice. The Knots, the green grasses, even some of the Blacks' distant cousins. A Malfoy in Gryffindor gives them language they did not have before. Our children are conflicted. Hogwarts is changing them. It sounds like concern. It functions as cover, a way to step back from the edge without calling it treason. For Voldemort, Hogwarts was always meant to be his quiet weapon. A headmaster he could intimidate or kill. A Slytherin house he could radicalize. A boy like Draco to move information and objects through corridors no aura could patrol. In this world, that pipeline is cracked from the start. Draco hears his father's instructions, hears Snape's careful questions. But he goes back to a tower where Harry, Ron and Hermione are waiting with parchment, maps and too many questions of their own. Intelligence leaks not in grand betrayals, but in hesitations, a delayed letter, an assignment misplaced, a warning muttered to McGonagall that makes her look twice at a cursed necklace before it reaches its target. Plans stall because Draco forgets to open a door, because he insists the Carrows must not be provoked just yet, because the boy they thought would sharpen Slytherin instead spends late nights helping Hermione ward unused classrooms. Specific moments begin to stack. 6th year on the astronomy tower, he lowers his wand and refuses to kill Dumbledore. That mercy keeps the one wizard alive who still understands Tom Riddle's soul. At Malfoy Manor, he looks at Harry. She looks at him. He does not identify the boy who has been his rival, his roommate, his accidental friend, and the Snatchers lose their prize. Under the Carrows, he misreports passwords, misfiles detentions, quietly sabotages their hold on the castle just enough that Neville's resistance can breathe. Each choice is small. Together, they are more than any description could contain. By the time Voldemort realizes that his supposed heir has become a conduit for doubt, it is too late. He does not just lose to Lily's sacrifice or Harry's willingness to die. He loses to a recruitment system that promised him Draco Malfoy as a weapon and delivered, instead, a Gryffindor with divided loyalties and access to everything he thought he owned. The night he finally understands that, another heir is already moving, and the next betrayal is waiting in a place even closer than a schoolhouse banner. The dorm is dark and full of breathing. Not whispers this time. Just 5 boys, 1 room, 1 red and gold banner, where a silver serpent should have been. Draco lies awake and stares at the canopy. Gryffindor. The word still feels like a miscast spell, something that should have fizzled out and left no mark. It hasn't. It has changed his bed, his roommates, the way McGonagall looks at him when she calls the roll. Has it changed him? Not yet. Not entirely. He has been planning this life since before he could walk, drilled on Malfoy pride at his father's knee, taught to wear arrogance like armor. That pride is still there. In Gryffindor, though, it tilts. The house does not reward elegant sneers. It cheers for who dives first, who stands up when they are shaking. So his pride learns a new language. He boasts about broom handling instead of bloodlines, about how quickly he can draw his wand, how he did not flinch when the fat lady's portrait swung at him for an unkind remark. Underneath, the old insecurity gnaws. In Slytherin, he would have hidden it behind a wall of boys who laughed when he laughed. Here, the laughter is different. Weasley laughs at him. Potter ignores him. Hermione corrects him. Gryffindor does not close ranks just because he is a Malfoy. It waits to see if he will run toward the fire or away from it. That uncertainty makes him sharper, more reckless, desperate to prove that he belongs in a world that was never meant to be his. Ambition survives the journey across the hall. It always would. But the rails it runs on begin to shift. A house that hands out points for charging into danger teaches him that glory is not in quiet manipulation, but in visible, undeniable acts. He wants the Quidditch captaincy, the prefect badge, Dumbledore's approving nod when he walks into the office after doing something brave and stupid and strangely right. The need for approval does not vanish. It simply looks for new eyes to impress. His prejudice does not vanish either. The first time he spits mudblood in this tower, the room goes silent in a way he did not expect. Ron surges to his feet. Hermione goes white, then red. Harry's voice cuts through, low and cold. Draco sees for the first time not a category, but 3 separate faces. each carrying a hurt he has been taught not to notice. Gryffindor forces him to live with those faces every day, at breakfast, in class, during late-night study sessions when Hermione's quill scratches beside his, and she still hands him a spare piece of parchment. Risk follows Gryffindor like a shadow. Trolls, cursed broomsticks, midnight corridors. Each time, he stands close enough to see the cost of cowardice and the strange, fierce relief of doing the right thing by accident and then on purpose. The echo chamber he was meant to have, green hangings, pure blood jokes, quiet praise for cruelty, never forms. Instead, he gets a lion's den where mockery lands badly and kindness, when he offers it by mistake, is remembered. Some things stay. He is still sarcastic, still cataloguing who sits where and who talks to whom, still cruel when cornered. But the targets shift. It becomes easier to snap at bullies than at Hufflepuffs, easier to jab at a Death Eater's son than at Neville Longbottom. His threshold for real harm rises, almost against his will. So would Draco still be Draco? Yes, recognizably so. Only now the same sharp edges are dragged, again and again, across a world that challenges his worst instincts instead of bowing to them, and every cut leaves a different kind of scar. And on a night when another heir moves a piece he does not see, those scars will decide which way he runs. The common room is quiet and full of ghosts, not the transparent kind, the kind made of names and stories and banners. Draco sits under the lion and thinks about snakes. He has been planning this escape route his whole life without knowing it, trained to believe that blood is destiny, that a Malfoy walks only one path. Gryffindor tears that map in half. In canon, Dumbledore tells Harry that it is our choices that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. This world simply refuses to let that line stay on a pretty page. It drags it into the dormitory, into detentions, into the moment Draco chooses whether to follow his father's letter or his own shaking hands. Because in this AU, choice is never abstract. It looks like a boy raised for cruelty standing between Neville and a curse in the corridor. It looks like him blurting out, too loudly, that maybe Hermione is right about house elves, and then flushing scarlet when the room turns to stare. His abilities have not changed. His blood certainly has not. What changes is who is waiting for him when he comes back from the bank at Christmas. What stories the common room tells about bravery. What it costs to keep sneering when the people you live with keep risking their lives for each other. This is where environment becomes a kind of slow, relentless magic. Canon already hints at it. Hagrid, the Weasleys, even the shabby safety of the burrow, nudging Harry toward the light. Here, that principle is stress-tested on someone bred for the dark mark. Surrounded by Gryffindors, Draco's hunger for approval has to find a new source. McGonagall's tight nod instead of Snape's indulgent smirk. Seamus clapping him on the back after a Quidditch save. Harry, mud-streaked and furious, still reaching out a hand when Draco falls. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. House identity, in that light, is both prison and path. The same scarlet and gold that trapped Draco under a banner he never wanted also opened doors he was never meant to see. A Malfoy in Gryffindor exposes just how arbitrary the old lines are. If the hat can put the air of a Death Eater beside the Muggle-born girl he once called a slur, how much of the magical world's hierarchy is nothing more than habit and fear dressed up as tradition? For Harry, this shatters the neat story, where he is the hero and Draco the villain. His rival sleeps 3 beds away. His critic shares his common room. His sometimes ally stands with him in the forest, wand shaking, when things go wrong with the stone. The narrative stops being a clean duel between light and dark and becomes something messier, more human, where the boy who tried to have him thrown off his broom might also be the one who shouts a warning at the right second. He looks at her. She looks at him. Hermione's world tilts too, because the enemy she filed under pure-blood bigot keeps making the wrong, inconveniently brave choice. Seen this way, the AU does not replace canon. It sharpens it. By forcing Draco into Scarlet, it reveals the hidden joints in the story, the places where house, blood, and prophecy were always more flexible than they looked. It invites us to read the original books again and ask, quietly, where else a different choice, a different common room, a different hand held out in the dark might have changed everything. The common room is not quiet. Firelight, voices, the rustle of parchment and wool. Somewhere in the middle of it all, a pale boy in scarlet sits alone, pretending not to listen. Now place yourself there. Not as a distant reader, but as a first year with a trunk that sticks on every stair, a schedule that makes no sense yet, and a house scarf that still feels new against your neck. In this world, Draco Malfoy is in your line for the portrait hole, in your queue for breakfast, in your eye line every time McGonagall walks into Transfiguration, and the room straightens by instinct. Which banner hangs over your bed? If you are Gryffindor, you share his dorm, hear his nightmares when he thinks no one is awake. Watch him hesitate before laughing at a pure-blood joke. He looks at you when someone mentions Death Eaters. You look back, and you have to decide whether you nod, look away, or ask the question no one else will ask. If you are Slytherin, you see the empty space where he should have been, a gap at the table, a missing seeker. You watch your prefects mutter about Dumbledore's interference and feel the house tighten, defensive, proud, suddenly leaderless. Do you try to become what Draco was meant to be? Or do you imagine walking across the hall, sitting under the red banners, and asking him why he left you to it? Maybe you are Ravenclaw, watching from the library stacks as Draco and Hermione argue over footnotes, as Harry and Draco compete for the same answer in defense, as Ron rolls his eyes and keeps score. Maybe you are Hufflepuff, sharing a herbology bench with a boy who has been taught to sneer at your house, and now finds you are the only one who will lend him pruning shears without comment. Would you trust him enough to join the DA when he walks in late, jaw set, claiming he has been planning this for weeks? Would you stand beside him in a dueling line, wand raised, knowing his father is on the other side of the war? Or do you mark your essays higher than his in your mind, race him for the snitch, treat him as one more rival to beat on the pitch and in exams? Smaller ripples follow you down every corridor. Different prefects chosen because the hat stole a Malfoy from Slytherin. Quidditch standings that shift when Gryffindor's seeker flies with cold calculation instead of reckless dives. Snape's lessons edged with something sharper when he looks at the Gryffindor table and sees Draco there, and McGonagall's mouth tightening as she gives and withholds points, testing how far this experiment can go. From your desk in History of Magic, you can imagine new futures. A Slytherin-led reform circle in the dungeons, trying to prove not all serpents serve the Dark Lord. A DA that becomes less a Gryffindor club and more a fragile parliament of all four houses. A future ministry where an ex-Gryffindor Malfoy writes policy on blood status while you sit 3 chairs down, wondering if you remember the night you first believed him. They look at each other across the great hall. You look at both of them. A moment of understanding passes between them. but you are the one who decides what it means. Because part of the power of a what if is not what is written here, but the spaces it leaves open for you to walk into. The choices you give your own OC, the alliances you sketch in margins, the quiet, private version of this story you build in your head. And somewhere ahead, in a corridor not yet lit, there is one more choice waiting. One scene this outline has not shown you yet, where everything you think you know about Gryffindor Draco turns sharply on a single word. That scene is yours. We close the door before it opens, leave the corridor dark, the last word unspoken on purpose. What we can see clearly now is the path that led there. A hat pressed to blonde hair, a boy holding his breath, waiting for the safety of green and silver, and hearing scarlet and gold instead. The first fracture, the way the hall looks at him, the way he walks, stiff-backed, to a table that does not know what to do with a Malfoy. From there, everything bends. Ron's scowl across a shared dormitory, Harry waking in the night and hearing Draco's quiet, angry breathing in the next bed, Hermione sitting opposite him at the table in the common room, ink on her fingers, refusing to look away when he says the word he was trained to say, and then, slowly, learning to never say it again. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, fragile and sharp as glass. We watched him pulled into the heart of canon events that once circled around him. A Gryffindor Draco on a midnight walk beneath an invisibility cloak that is not his. His voice in the trio's whispered plans about the stone. His wand hand shaking in the chamber when the basilisk moves and he chooses to stand in front of someone instead of behind them. Third year, when the world insists Sirius Black is a monster, and Draco has to decide whether to perform fear or listen to the man who knows everything about masks and masters. Fourth year, the pattern shatters again. No Slytherin cheering section at the Triwizard Tasks, only one house table that cannot quite decide whether to claim him. He has been planning this new role for years without knowing it. Every sarcastic remark and every flinch from his father's letters, teaching him how to play double, then triple agent when Voldemort returns. By the time the war comes, the boy who was meant to open doors for the Dark Lord is the one quietly locking them behind the Order instead. That is the heart of this timeline. One altered moment, revealing hidden facets of a familiar face, showing how much of destiny is costume, how much of identity is the room that answers when you walk through the door. If the hat can look at Draco Malfoy and see a lion, what else in this world have we misread? So now, it's your turn. In all of this, what was the altered moment that stayed with you? The one scene, large or small, you would keep at any cost? And which part would you write differently? With one spell changed, one alliance broken, one letter arriving a day too late? Tell me in the comments. Build your version in the space between these lines, because this is only one branch. Next time, perhaps it is Neville standing in Slytherin green, or Sirius surviving the veil, or a world where Lily walks out of Gringotts as Lady Potter, with Harry at her side. The same slow burn, the same political and magical weight, a different first stone thrown into the lake. For now, though, the storm is over. The castle sleeps. In the Gryffindor common room, older Draco sits alone beneath the lion banner. The fire is low. The sky beyond the window is clear. He looks up at the red and gold above him and, for the first time, does not brace. It is not a sentence. It is a home. Fade there. Hold the image. Then let it go.